Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone who might be tuning in. We're just rearranging ourselves in the room. Okay. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I'm Councillor Chris Atwell, Chair of the Planning Committee. Limited public seating has been made available. However, the meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. The public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street past the University's Park building. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust's fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that the meeting will be live streamed and everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly they do not wish to be recorded. Please, can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when you have finished, otherwise the camera will remain on you. If there is any voting, please can members keep their hands raised clearly until the number of votes have been stated. To everyone in the room, we have some building works going on in the Guildhall today, which may or may not affect our ability to make progress with the meeting, but we'll see how we go. We need to make some introductions. Members, if I could ask you to introduce yourselves, if we start over here.
Peter Candlish, Councillor for East Nean Craneswater.
Good morning, Peter.
Judith Smythe, Councillor for St Jude Ward.
Good morning, Judith.
Mary Vallely, Councillor for Cosham and Wimmering.
Good morning, Mary.
Oscar Shah, Councillor for Cosham and Wimmering.
Hello, Shah. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. John Smith, East Nean Craneswater Ward.
Good morning, John. Thank you.
Councillor Raymond Dent, Copner Ward.
Good morning, Raymond. Thank you.
Good morning, Chris. I'm Darren Sanders. I'm a councillor for Baffins, North Milton and South Copner, and I'm deputising for Councillor Gerald Vernon Jackson, who has an important family emergency to deal with.
Thank you, Darren. You're welcome. Members, any apologies? Anybody would like to give? Democratic Services, any apologies from anyone?
No, Chair.
No, thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Juliet. Oh, we haven't introduced officers. It's all going very well this morning. I feel like we may be an apple sort of ride this morning.
Shall I start?
Please do.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Juliet Gill. I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor for Portsmouth City Council. I know it's very late, but Happy New Year.
Simon.
Morning, my name's Simon Turner, I'm the Planning Officer.
Good morning, Karen Martin, Democratic Services.
Thank you, Karen. And if I could ask anyone who's planning to speak at today's meeting to introduce themselves using the microphone as well, just so we know who you are, if we can start over here.
Councillor Russell Simpson of Hilsey Ward.
Good morning. Russell, thank you.
Susan Thomas, I'm speaking on the Tamworth Road issue. It's down as number 2, but I believe it's 3 now.
Ah, okay, sorry. So Susan
Thomas.
Okay, I haven't got that on my deputation list. I don't know. Are you here to speak in favour or objecting?
Objecting.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Poppy Thomas-Taylor, and I'm objecting on the 291 Queens Road on behalf of my nan, Kay Simmons.
Thank you. Welcome.
Morning, everyone. I'm Carrie-Anne Wells. I'm the agent for Applecore, deputising on 2 of the applications on the agenda today.
Thank you, Carrie-Anne.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Arthur Webb, objecting on the application for Ophir Road.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Chris Green, also objecting on the Ophir Road application.
Thank you and welcome. Anybody else?
My name's Simon Hill. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant for 26 Fairburn Road and 198 Fawcett Road.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Okay, declarations of interest. Juliet, you'd like to give us some information before we...
Yes, I thought it'd be sensible to just give you some advice in relation to 20 Pretoria Road, which is an application for Councillor Hunt, so that you can make sure you make your declarations properly. A couple of councillors have already asked me advice on this, so I thought I would just run through it. None of you will have a disclosable pecuniary interest in this matter. What you'll need to decide is whether you've got a personal and prejudicial interest, or bias or appearance of bias, or predetermination. So I'll just run through the personal interest. So you'll have a personal interest in the matter if it might reasonably regard as affecting your well-being or the financial position or the well-being or financial position of a relevant person. Now, a relevant person includes any person with whom you have a close association. And then what you need to do is, if you consider you've got a personal interest, you then need to go on and consider whether you've got a prejudicial interest. So to consider whether it's a prejudicial interest, you need to apply the test of whether a member of the public with knowledge of all the facts would reasonably regard as so significant that it's likely to project prejudicial judgment of the public interest. Now, if you're just a member of the same party, or you know each other through obviously being members, that's not enough. So a close association is someone who you would like socialise with on a regular basis, or those kind of things. In terms of the predetermination, you basically have to have an open mind about the application. So if you've still got an open mind, you haven't predetermined, okay? And when you're looking at bias and appearance of bias, you have to look at the facts around yourself in relation to that person, so Councillor Hunt, and decide whether a fair-minded observer, informed observer, having considered the facts, would conclude that there was a real possibility of bias. So when you're looking at bias, it's not just bias, it's the appearance of bias as well. Now, if any of you want to come and take some advice, we can adjourn so I can give you individual advice. I hope that helps you.
Thank you, Juliet. That's helpful. So, members, declarations of interest on any of today's items. Councillor Sanders.
Thank you. Due to the emergency nature of me being on the committee, I will not be determining the development on Tamworth Road because I'll be making a deputation on it. I do believe that there would be an appearance of bias involving the deputation on 20 Pretoria Road, so will not be determining that. Stamshire on Tipner Leisure Centre falls within the housing revenue account, of which I am the budget holder. Therefore, on Juliet's test, I don't think I can credibly determine that on the basis of the appearance of bias, not on whether I've actually been talked to about this, because I haven't. So if Juliet is okay, I will absent myself from those three.
Thank you. Please.
Chair, having attended an excellent birthday party for Councillor Lee Hunt at the weekend, I think I also have to absent myself from item 6 on the agenda as I see it, the 20 Pretoria Road.
And that is also the reason for me absenting myself on it as well.
Okay, well, I hope everybody had a nice time. I shall declare a personal interest, but I shall remain on that item. Anything else? Okay, thank you, members. Minutes of the previous meeting on the 6th of December, pages 5 to 14 of the pack. Are we happy that they are an accurate record of that meeting? Do I have a proposer? Councillor Smith, thank you. Councillor Candish, seconding? There you are, thank you very much. Okay, members, some things do not change despite the year changing. There's a slight change in the running order this morning to enable members of the public who are here to give a deputation to give their deputations in case the noise returns and we have to reconvene another time. So let's try and get through it in this order. So Queen's Road will be the first, which is as published, and then Ophire, which is item number 4. Then Tamworth Road, Fearon Road, Fawcett Road, Pretoria, and then Stamshaw and Tipno Leisure Centre. Okay. So to today's substantive business, and we'll kick off with Queen's Road, Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. Should there be any noise from the drilling and banging and so on, and anyone not here, please do wave or try and make sure that any of us repeat anything that needs repeating. We have a planning application at 291 Queen's Road for the change of use from a Class C3 dwelling house to either Class C3 dwelling house or Class C4 house in multiple occupation. So it's proposing a flexible use class between C3 and C4 for a 10-year period, meaning the owner of the property can occupy it as either C3 or C4, going from one to the other for that 10-year period without needing to apply for planning permission again. There are no updates on the application, and we have deputations coming up from the agent and Poppy Thomas Taylor. The Queen's Road runs east to west along the centre of Portsmouth, quite a long road. This is towards the eastern end, 180 metres to Copner Road. It's a mid-terraced house, as you can see from the plans and the front elevation there. Small front garden, typical front garden, enough space to accommodate some bins, as probably already happens, as you can see next door on both sides. It's come to planning committee because of numbers of objection. We've had 7, raising a range of points set out in the report for you. With respect to the 2 principal matters we look at when determining such applications, they are the local balance of the community in terms of numbers of HMOs set against other residential properties, and then the living, the standard of living accommodation proposed for the proposed occupiers. With respect to the data count, which you can see here, this is the 50-metre radius is shown in red, which is our policy distance, within which we look to see whether or not more than 10% of the residential properties would be in HMO use were this application to be approved. There are 64 properties. This is all set out in the report in front of you. There are 64 properties within the 50-metre radius. 2 existing ones are HMOs. To the east and to the northeast. This one is just outside the site to the east. So with the third one proposed, this would take the percentage to 4.68%, below the 10% normal maximum threshold. So we would consider the community to remain as a balanced community with respect to policy. With respect to the standard of accommodation proposed, as set out in the report, there will be a small single-storey extension and a very small side rear extension I'll show in a moment, and a roof dormer extension. You can see the existing property, a fairly standard arrangement for some Victorian properties in Portsmouth, with 3 bedrooms at first floor and reception rooms at ground floor and a lean-to at the back. The minor extension to the side is there's just this little cut in here. That's just going to be filled out and squared off, as you can see here, if it's granted planning consent. Then there would be a permitted development extension at the rear, and then the roof extensions on the rear main body and along the rear wing to provide accommodation in that roof space. The table sets out on 8.10, paragraph 8.10, sets out all of the room sizes. I'll take you through them briefly. So proposed is a front bedroom and an ensuite, a lounge, the tanks utility room in the middle of the house there, and then the kitchen diner at the rear. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms, 1, 2, 3, each with an ensuite, and in the roof, 2 more bedrooms, each with an ensuite. Looking at the table of room sizes, we're reminded that all of the rooms comply with the minimum standards, and then on top of that, the ground floor in the lounge isn't required, but nevertheless is shown as an extra effectively. That is a simple summary of the application and the officer's recommendation. The report goes on to deal in slightly more detail with some of the other matters around parking and other complaints or concerns raised. But in the round on those 2 principal points and all the other points, the officers are able to recommend approval.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, Poppy, over to you for your deputation. And you're giving a deputation on behalf of Kay Simmons, is that? That's correct. Yeah. Okay. So you have 6 minutes to give your deputation.
Okay, thank you. I'm here today to make an objection on behalf of my nan, who's the neighbour to the right of this property. My nan strongly objects to this application, changing the property from a residential home to a house in multiple occupancy. The proposed plans are for having 6 individuals living here, and the reality of this is that it could potentially have 6 couples living here, with an increased amount of family, friends and visitors, making it 6 times greater than the average family home. This is without a doubt going to cause a considerable amount of noise and disturbance to her and the neighbouring properties. The parking is extremely difficult now, and again, with having 6 individuals along with visitors here, this would increase the volume massively. The extension on the plans are measuring around 5.5 metres in depth from the original wall of the house. This seems to be on the very large scale for a terraced house under permitted development. With an extension being this big, it will cause a loss of light to her grandchildren's playroom, and she believes it will be built within a 45-degree angle from her rear door and window. After 60 years of her living here, she will now feel an immense loss of privacy and enjoyment in her garden from the structure and the proposed plans. If this application is approved, she believes it will devalue her property. After reading many forums, the majority of people's advice is to avoid buying a house next door to a house in multiple occupancy. I'd be grateful if you could consider my nan's objection and truly see the negative impact this will have. As an elderly lady, she would like to enjoy her retirement in her family home she's worked over 60 years for. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and giving a deputation this morning. I think, Carrie-Anne, you're going to give a deputation as the agent.
At Apical, we could not be more passionate about providing our clients with high-end, fully compliant, well-designed shared living spaces. We have lots of repeat clients who share that vision, 2 of whom I represent with properties on the agenda today. We have designed many HMOs in Portsmouth and surrounding areas, and our designs have never been subject to refusal of a HMO licence. We ensure all of our designs are fully compliant with planning, building control and HMO licensing, and we work hard to ensure we stay at the forefront of any changes to legislation to ensure our client has the best possible experience with us and is left with a great design and shared living home to give tenants the best possible living experience whilst being compliant with all the relevant regimes. It's becoming more and more apparent that landlords are exiting the rental sector. Smaller HMOs are becoming less viable due to rising utility costs and the newly implemented additional licensing scheme. This has led to many landlords who are either unwilling or unable to do works in order to be compliant with the new licensing scheme, selling their smaller HMOs or switching back to family lets. This in turn places a greater need for the growing market in larger HMOs which have been fully renovated and provide high-end, energy-efficient living with spacious bedrooms and well-designed communal areas. And I urge you as members to bear this in mind when considering the applications I represent today. With regard to 291 Queen's Road, all bedrooms in this property meet or exceed the 10 square metres. The required communal area for 6 persons when all bedrooms meet the 10 square room size is 22.5, and this property provides almost 25 square metres of communal area, which exceeds that requirement. All of the bedrooms benefit from additional ensuite, which again exceeds requirement. As the officer mentioned, at 4.6% HMO density, it could also be argued that there's a clear need for this type of accommodation to ensure a range of property type for mixed and balanced communities. The house will be finished to a high specification, as our client is keen to offer tenants high-end accommodation. The property will be professionally managed, and any issues if they arise will be dealt with promptly. To pick up on the objection, just to reassure them, they won't be a license will not be given for double occupancy for those rooms, so there won't be the 12 people that they're worried about. The application fully complies with policy PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23 of the local plan, and also complies with the Housing and Multiple Occupation Supplementary Planning document. The Planning Officer's recommend is fully compliant application for approval today, and I ask you all to fully support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Councillor Sanders.
Thanks, Chris. I've got 2 questions. The first is that in 8.33 of the report, it says that the external works would be permitted development, and therefore considerations against any loss of light or privacy would not be relevant. In Poppy's deputation, she talked about the issues around privacy and overlooking that her nan would face from the garden as a result of this development. Am I right, Simon, in saying that basically those sorts of work she's referring to would happen anyway under government-permitted development rules?
That's right, Councillor Sanders. It's a helpful question because to clarify for the neighbours or the residents, the permitted development rights for extensions could be enacted today by a homeowner who is a family, C3 dwelling use, or C4. So we're unable, that's permitted development, which means the local planning authority can't intervene with its own opinion about the effect of a physical extension because it is permitted development.
Thank you. I've got one more question, Chris, before Judith comes in. I'm not allowed to say I think that stinks, but anyway, I'll ask for another question if I may. Carrie-Anne talked about having no double occupancy within the development, and from what I know of other areas she's done in the city, that tends to be the case. Simon or Juliet, as the lawyer here, is there anything to stop us, given that that's the clear wish of the developer, from including that as a planning condition, as well as the licensing team who will make damn sure that that doesn't happen? I think that would provide further security for local residents, particularly given the rather disgraceful stuff around permitted development.
Thank you. It's another helpful question to clarify for the neighbours. The application is for a Class C3 or C4 property. C4 is up to 6 individuals, and as the agent also stated, a licence will be needed, and that would also control the numbers of residents through licensing. So we don't feel there's any need through planning to add any further control.
My question, Chair, was almost identical to that, but on page 16, the proposal is described as for 6 individuals, and I believe that would tie the applicant into 6 individuals rather than allowing double occupancy. Is that the case?
Well, we're in danger of straying into the question about C4 to sui generis, which is another more complicated matter. But in front of us, it's an application for C4 up to 6 persons. And as I say, the licensing will definitely control that matter.
It also says it on page 16.
Thank you, Judith. Members, any comments on this application? Bremens, do you want to?
Yeah, there was an application that was withdrawn. Where is it? Why? It seems, I've just looked at it, it seems exactly the same what's already up there.
I asked that for completeness. It doesn't affect the determining of the application, but just for information, we understand there was some incompletion of the purchase, something like that, between the homeowner and presumably the applicant. There was further time needed for agreement and so on, so I think the applicant decided it was better to withdraw the application, wait for those things to sort themselves out, and then reapply.
Sounds okay. Members, any comments on this application? And I think for Poppy, thank you for coming and giving us a deputation. As a committee, we have to look at the material planning considerations of this application, and I think, having looked at them and heard the presentation, I'm going to move the officer's recommendation to approve with the conditions that are attached. I need a seconder though, if anybody might feel able to do that, so we can make some progress. Well, if we can't make any progress, then we're not going to get anywhere. Councillor Candice?
Chair, for the reasons you outline, that essentially we are constrained by some of the limits which are set, I can see no reason to disagree with the officer's recommendation, and therefore I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Members, is there anything else on this application?
I'm just checking bicycle arrangements, and I haven't yet found what I was looking for. Is it in?
There's a condition. There's a condition.
Good, it's in. Thank you. I couldn't find it in time.
So with the conditions.
I would second that recommendation, please.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we'll have a third. Okay. Members, unless there is anything else, we'll move to the votes. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Okay. Against? And abstentions?
Planning permission is therefore granted.
Thank you. And I'm sure the agent will engage with your Nan and make sure that she's kept informed and reassured throughout the process. Okay, thank you. Okay, Ophir Road.
Page 45. Page 45.
Judith, just one more thing. Are you okay there? The sun is beating down on you there. Can you see? Do we need to? I'm okay. You sure? Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies if my pronunciation isn't quite right, but I'll follow the Chairman's example. 118 Ophir Road, Portsmouth. It's an application for a change of use from a Class C3 dwelling house to a large HMO, that is for 8 persons in 8 bedrooms. There are no updates, and we have speaking from Christopher Green and Arthur Webb. So Ophir Road up in Hilsea, at the western end of Ophir Road, not far from Alexandra Park. You can see there in the northwest corner, and the Mountbatten Centre, just to locate you. Terraced houses, it's a mid-terrace house. It's another view or from the rear. There's the property. In the middle. Has a small forecourt there, which can accommodate waste storage for sure. It's come to committee because of a call-in from councillors Simpson and Weems, and multiple objections in the region of 44. Just like for the previous application, I'll visit the two main points of policy matter for HMOs, which are the local community balance and then the standard of living proposed for the future occupiers were this to be approved. So at the western end of Ophir Road, we've got the 50-metre radius as shown. And currently there are no HMOs within that particular radius. One or two just outside to the south on Shadwell Road. And there are further ones, I know, to the east. But within this 50-metre radius, none. And therefore, with adding this application were to be approved, there would be 1 out of 63 properties. That includes some flats, I recall, equaling 1.59%. So well below the 10% policy threshold we use to judge, broadly speaking, whether or not the community would remain in a reasonable balance with a reasonable mix of residential occupation. So no objection from officers on that part. It complies with policy. Moving on to the floor plans, just a quick indication of the approximate location of the rear extension. Cycle storage at the rear, bins at the front. Again, a fairly traditional arrangement of the existing property, habitable rooms downstairs, including a lean-to conservatory, I think it is, at the rear, and 3 bedrooms upstairs. Existing elevations. The property would be extended at ground floor under the prior approval application set out in the report and at roof level with permitted development rights. I'll take you through the arrangements. There will be 3 bedrooms on the ground floor, each with an ensuite, 1, 2, 3. And then at the extended rear would be the communal kitchen dining room. A pair of French doors leading out into the side yard and the back garden. First floor, there would be 3 bedrooms, each with an ensuite. And then 2 more in the roof, both with ensuites and a tank room in the expanded roof under permitted development. For completeness, you can see the prior approval extension at the rear and the rebuilding and the rooftop extensions there. In terms of the room sizes, it's set against your standards. They all comply with the 10-metre larger size for the bedrooms because the communal living room is less than 34, but because of the larger bedrooms, they're allowed to go to 22.5 square metres. They're at just over 23. And then the sanitary provision with an ensuite in each room is way above the expected standard. So with respect to the living conditions for the future occupiers, that is deemed to be acceptable as well. And the overall arrangement and disposition of the rooms and light in the house and so on looks acceptable. Clearly, a large number of objections, and we'll hear from some of the local residents in due course, and I don't mean to underplay any of those objections. I've dealt with the 2 principal matters. The matters of parking is a matter in hand. We don't hold that the parking from a good-sized family property, which could be extended and occupied by a large family, is so distinct from an HMO occupation. So on that basis, we wouldn't be able to resist the proposal on the concerns or fears of an increased parking demand. There have been some concerns raised about anxiety and mental health from both, I think, the works associated with the conversion and extension and from the future occupation. Those are real concerns for people. neighbours, depending on family circumstances and individual circumstances. We have this from time to time and consider it within the Human Rights Act and the Public Sector Equality Duty, but don't find that these matters, although clearly important for the individuals concerned, are able to withhold planning permission. And what the best we can do is to kindly ask the developer to take those into account and work proactively as best they can with the immediate neighbours to lessen the impact of construction in particular. Then, of course, the property is going to be managed, if approved in due course, properly as well by the agent and other services at the council and other public services in case of any problems. The applicant's agent is here today and no doubt will be liaising, if not already, with any concerned neighbours. So on the two main points, there's no reason as Planning Officer C to withhold consent, so that is the recommendation to approve the application.
Thank you. Mr. Green, over to you for your deputation. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to, first of all, just draw your attention to the committee papers and the proposed ground floor layout. Now, in the actual proposal, it said that we're going to have bike sheds at the rear of the property. And looking at this proposed layout, with the way that the ground floor is changing, it's going to be taking bikes through a narrowed section of corridor, through what looks like a pretty cluttered kitchen dining area to get it to the rear of the property. Now, yes, I understand that this could actually be done, and it's able to be done. I would say practically, though, that there would be few people that would actually want to be taking bikes in and out, particularly during sort of the winter months when weather's not the best, the bikes are dirty, and taking it through a kitchen area where there may be various different people who are occupying the residence actually cooking at the time is not actually conducive to good practice and hygiene. And therefore, I would also say realistically, I think it's lip service that is being paid to this property having this bike shed at the rear. A second point I might like to bring up is on point 5.9 of the papers, where it says about the parking standards, and it points out that 2 spaces per dwelling for any scale of HMO or Class 3 house with 4 or more bedrooms is the expectation. I accept and I understand that that's the expectation. However, this is a property which doesn't have any restricted parking zones, so it won't be able to be enforced. We are talking about 8 professional people, as it was laid out in the original documents, would be living there, which would then mean that if they are not using a bike because they don't want to be taking it in and out of the through the property to the rear of the property, potentially 8 vehicles, because there's no way of actually enforcing it just being 2 or 3. Those points I do understand within the council remit and looking on paper are realistically points that you cannot actually take into account based on what your it meets the criteria. I would just like to identify that it meets the criteria on paper. In reality, it can make a much bigger difference. The main thing I would like to actually bring to your attention, though, is from, let me get to it. Point 5.17. Which says matters of objection raised concerning anxiety and mental health are noted, but it cannot be assumed that this proposal would necessarily lead to or exacerbate such matters. I would actually like to put that to you in a slightly different way. Matters of objection raised concerning anxiety and mental health are noted, but it cannot be assumed that this proposal won't lead to or exacerbate such matters. We are basically making an assumption. We're saying we can't assume that it's going to have an effect. I would actually like to tell you a practical story now of our experience from a previous place we occupied. We were living in a place which was next to a dwelling which had 5 occupants. It was a dwelling which was occupied by students, and there was lots of noise, lots of parties during the nights, occupied having really disruptive influence. As I've mentioned in our objection, we have 2 girls, now young ladies, who have additional needs. Anxiety, epilepsy. They actually have Odluro syndrome, which I won't go into because I don't have time. But they need continuity, they need consistency, they need things that need to be structured, and any sort of disruption with changing routines to them causes issues. And for the older one in particular, it causes anxiety. Now, when we were at this previous place, because of the disruption from the neighbours, the anxiety grew and rose, and her anxiety actually demonstrates itself in aggression. And on 2 occasions, we actually had to have the police out to try and actually calm her down. Eventually, it was suggested by social services, and actually happened, that she moved into a residential area which was for those with additional needs. However, she couldn't cope with that either, being away from the family, and after we'd moved house, because of being in the situation we were in, she then moved back home. To put her back through that again, I think, is a real possibility because of this, and to be able to say it can't be assumed, I think is just not good enough. I would like to thank you for the opportunity for putting my objection.
Well, thank you for being here this morning to give your deputation. Mr. Webb, 6 minutes.
Good morning. May I start by saying thanking you for giving me the opportunity to give my deputation. There are some bullet points I'd like to make. Then I would like to strengthen the fact on what my neighbour has said in regards to the mental health. I have 2 young children that suffer anxiety as well. So there's not just one family affected by, it's not a class 4 dwelling, it's a mini hotel, 8 people, it's not 6, it's 8 individuals. It's not one family affected, it's 2. I may like to point out first of all the characteristics of the building. There's no other building or house within that Ophir Road that has the proposed front dormer on the plans. This would detrimentally ruin the characteristics and the furniture of a lovely Victorian road. It will stand out like a sore thumb. My profession of 20 plus years is a high voltage power cable engineer. I look after all the power cables on the Wessex Rail from Fulham all the way to Dorchester. In regards to the utilities, I'm not sure if you guys are, I've not seen no feasibility surveys to say the high voltage power cable that feeds the properties within Ophir Road, the 33,000 volt oil field power cables, will not be affected. A power cable consists of 3 phases, red, yellow, blue. It's not one power cable that feeds every house. The red phase may feed 20 houses. The yellow phase may feed 30 houses. That is when we have a power cut in any roads in Portsmouth, you may see your neighbours across the road, 10 houses have got no power. Adjacent to the road, you've got power because they're fed on different phases. During the winter months, as you understand, if you've all got smart meters, you put your kettle on, you see your smart meter rise. 20, 30 seconds, but you see a rise in that smart meter. The cost alone for a power failure due to the occupants all having kettles on, all having televisions on, smart TVs, DAB radios, washing machines going constantly, 8 people. They'll have to be washed all the time. You cannot stop a washing machine. That would no doubt cost the taxpayer a considerable amount of money. I'm talking from previous experience. A Pearson 2 repair to a high voltage power cable comes at a cost of approximately £80,000 to £100,000 and a disruption of at least a bare minimum 2 weeks. Now we're talking water pressures. The occupants, all en suites. Potentially, they're all in on a Sunday. They're all having showers. What would be the PSI or the bar pressure of neighbours' water pressures? I could go on to the gas pressure, but this is irrelevant. In regards to parking, I will not make any assumption on parking. Parking is what it is in this city. Unfortunately, it is what it is. No matter where you go, unless you have a drive, parking is parking. But what I would like to stamp on is the mental health issue, as my neighbour has just pointed out. From various conversations with my neighbour, he moved from his recent property to where he is now, Ophir Road, approximately 3 years ago. The young ladies are wonderful ladies, wonderful young ladies. They're always out, they're always chatting. You can see them happy. They literally moved before from a nightmare. From a moral point of view, you cannot put not just his children, but my vulnerable children as well. I have a 4-year-old little girl who is very anxious and very nervous around people. With the disruption, not just the building works, I understand, and may I say, thank you for pointing out that they would take potentially care and doing the building work. It's not the building works of the property. Once the property has been developed, the builders leave, it's the standing of the property afterwards with, like we say, 8 professionals, if you want to call them. It will not potentially be just 8 professionals. They will have family, friends, partners, not a problem, will come round and visit. The houses were built 112 years ago. They're Victorian. You can hear a pin drop in them. I can hear from my next door, who's unfortunately a Manchester United fan, when they score, I can hear him cheer. Me and my son laugh about that. We don't need to watch a football. We can hear them cheer. There was a guy in 2017, lived 101 Ophir Road. His name was Mr. Mark Fisher. A single middle-aged gentleman lived in the property. There was a proposal for a HMO at 103, the next door. At the planning committee, he asked for a condition to be applied within approval of full soundproofing of every room, every floor. That was one middle-aged gentleman. This is facts, not fabrication. This is facts of 2 families with vulnerable situations with their children and mental health needs. So please may I ask, as a bare minimum control, that full soundproofing of every room and every room floor is applied. That is not, if this is, excuse my French, if this is a developer that's not profiteering, they will have no objection whatsoever to show that constraint put in place. Not a problem, in my opinion. Basically, that's what I'd like to say, and that's why I'm on the matter. Obviously, in regards to mental health, I'd like to make you aware, last year alone, there was a 40% increase of young adults and young children's mental health. That was approximately over 1 million personnel that required NHS treatment of some sort, and an already NHS struggling NHS. Back a few months ago, we had National Worldwide Mental Health Day. Mental health is an issue. It's not something you can just brush off. It's there. It's not visible in some states, and there's no age. It has no age, and it is an extremely important matter. And may I just say, all adults in this room, as adults, and whatever profession we do, we all have a duty of care to try and look after young adults, young children, and even the older age that suffer with mental health. In any walk of life you do, we all have a duty of care. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, again, thank you for being here and giving your deputation. I'm hoping the agent will pick up on some of the points that you've raised. Carry on, over to you.
Firstly, I just wanted to assure you that this application is fully compliant with standard. It meets all the bedrooms meet or exceed 10 square metres, and the communal area meets the required standard also. All the bedrooms benefit from an additional ensuite, which also exceeds requirement. I wanted to pick up on a couple of points that the neighbours have brought up, so feel my time would be best spent addressing that. So the kitchen dining layout is shown for illustrative purposes only, and we just put that on to help members visualise how the property will be used. In practice, the kitchen is designed with licensing requirements in mind and ease of the tenants in mind. So I can assure you that the finished product will ensure that the tenants are able to move the cycles through the space easily, as is the case for most terrace properties in Portsmouth. Also, Mr Green mentioned about the student property next door in his previous property. This property is for professionals. The client is spending probably about £180,000 on the build and renovation. It wouldn't be in his interests to not vet his tenants and ensure that the people moving into there are not the people that are going to cause problems to the property. I wanted to ensure them, reassure them in that sense. I'm also happy to pass on my details to be a point of contact if any issues arise. You can give me a call and I can contact the developer directly. Mr Webb mentioned there was a front dormer on the plans. There isn't a front dormer on the plans. There is just 2 skylights on the front, so it will still be in keeping with the street scene. Also wanted to pick up that the walls are upgraded and they're insulated to comply with new building control requirements. That would greatly increase the noise disruption for way above that of the existing for both adjoining neighbours. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on one thing first. I'm sure Simon didn't mean to do this. The used word of typical arrangement. These are 3-bedroom homes. These are family homes in a family road. 4-bedroom max with loft conversion. So, this is a super HMO. And when we're talking about parking as well and not having consideration, you're going from a max of 4 adults, 4 cars to 8 cars, down a road that's been notoriously poor for parking, but also on the end is Gladys Avenue, which a third of it is double yellow lines. So it just blows my mind, and I will get back to parking later on with my next deputation, but I do kind of feel that parking isn't taken seriously. Carrie-Anne didn't actually, Carrie-Anne won't turn around, but it would be really nice if you could guarantee the full sound proofing instead of it saying it's up to regulation. It'd be really good to say, well, you know what, we will go out, we will make sure that this is proper soundproofing to accommodate our neighbours that have, have these circumstances. I think that'd be really, really good, and I hope that the planning committee can maybe put that in the permission. But personally, I'm looking at this application. I think it's too many rooms. Personally, I think they should be refused, but at a minimum deferred for a site visit, because irrelevant of how the planning looks, and just to give us an idea, that 8 seats table looks pretty tight to me. I think sardines have more room in a sardine tin can, and so if there's consideration that you're thinking, well, we probably will put this through, please defer it and visit it and make your own mind up. But also, I would really like if the planning committee would consider enforcing that full soundproofing, considering the 2 neighbours have these circumstances in place. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Members, questions on this application? Darren.
Thanks, Chris. Simon, we heard some pretty heartrending comments from Mr Green and Mr Webb about the impact as they see it on their families. I don't think anybody can't be moved by that. Under planning law, can we take on board the issues about potential mental health impacts, particularly on children with significant disabilities, under the auspices of, and this is just a horrendously inhuman term, affecting the amenity of neighbours, which is a horrendously inhuman way of describing what Mr Green and Mr Webb have outlined? Can we consider those things under planning law?
Well, it's not so much planning law as the human rights and the public sector equality duty is set out in the report. So it's other areas of legislation that are more universal than planning law. You're right, it's obviously a very, very concerning situation to the two neighbours involved and their families. And it's difficult. We have taken advice on this matter in detail, legal advice, and from our equalities officer on exactly the same situation for conversions and other scenarios on other sites. And for similar scenarios, it's been concluded from the equalities officer and the legal advisor that we are unable to affect the determination of the application with respect to these matters. That's not to say they don't matter. Of course they do. If I may go on to go on into the noise insulation side of things, and I think that's the opportunity which can help address the situation to whatever degree. The building regulations require noise insulation, so that will have to take place, as the agent has confirmed and as Councillor Simpson has asked. For this committee to ask beyond the building regulations will be ultra vires, beyond its powers. The building regulations apply separately, and so we don't need any condition at all. They will apply irrespective of the planning conditions. So if this is approved, the building regulations will require a good standard of sound insulation, which undoubtedly is better than the standard from 100 plus years ago, 120 years ago, when these properties were built. I live in a property of this sort of age, and I know how thin the walls can be. This will be to a higher standard, undoubtedly. So there's actually an improvement resulting there. Whether or not the applicant, if approved, might wish to provide a higher standard is up to the applicant and the neighbours requesting that. With respect to the layout of the property, the kitchen dining room at the rear, if we could have the plan up please, Karen, is mostly slightly beyond the Mr. Green at 120, which I hope might alleviate some of the overlap as well. Just get my bearings. That little nib there is the, whoops. I'm not able to zoom in. The little nib there is the back of the neighbouring property. So the kitchen room arrangements at the back of next door, 120, will overlap just the first little bit of entry into the kitchen. The main body of the kitchen is beyond the main body of the neighbour at number 120. So the overlap is hopefully minimal. And if that's insulated to modern standards, I would hope that would provide a reasonable standard of a good standard of noise insulation. Of course, perhaps you're less worried about that room, I don't know, because that's a room with a lot of activity in terms of families, comings and goings and so on. Otherwise, to number 20, you've got the corridor through the house with people coming and going, but not spending time in there. The same at in the middle body of the house. The bedrooms will be as existing next door, 2 rooms there. On to Mr. Webb at 116, you've got the gap with the rear light well there, and then you've got bedrooms on each floor to the rooms next door. So that's the situation. We have to leave it to building regulations, is my advice, not to undermine the importance of the issues raised.
Thank you, Sam. Chris, I've got 2 more questions. Well, 2 more issues to raise, maybe 3 more questions. Simon, how many people live at the property at the moment?
I don't know. It's a family house. It could be one person. It could be any number of people, depending on how they decide to live.
Okay. Thank you very much for that local residence. The reason I'm saying it is because in 518, in paragraph 1 of 518, you say again, with regards, this is about the existing lawful use, it's considered that use of the property will not have a significantly greater impact on local services than the existing use, which could be occupied by a similar number of occupants. And I understand you don't know, and that's fine, how many occupants exist. But given that this is significantly more than the 1 or 2 bedroom increases that we normally see around here, that's why I'm interested to know how many occupants would normally live in that property. If you don't know, that's fine.
Indeed, I don't know. What we have to look at is the the size of the
It's a
accommodation.
three-bedroom property at the moment.
And what it could accommodate. It's a three-bedroom property at the moment, I believe. And then it could be extended under the same permitted development rights that the applicant would like to employ. If a larger family thought this was a property they would like to move into and buy and extend, they could do that. So the property could be extended under permitted development and so on in the same way as shown here, and then whatever size family move in. So it's the size of the accommodation. Whatever the current occupancy is, 1 or 8 or anything in between.
Well, these permitted development regs have a lot to answer for. My final point is around fire risk and fire safety, which is raised by the objectors. Now, you say, essentially, it's not a material planning consideration, it's for building regulations and or licensing, again in 518. Why can it not be judged under the amenity of future occupiers?
In terms of the way the planning system was set up and has evolved, amenity tends to be matters of noise, outlook, light, those sorts of matters, scale of properties being built or extensions and how that may affect you. Matters like the utilities that Mr. Webb was talking about are dealt with by other regulations quite properly. You know, planners aren't utilities engineers in any way, and that has to be dealt with under entirely different regulatory regimes, as does fire risk as well. So the building regulations and or licensing will deal with the fire regulations to the appropriate modern standard.
Those are my questions, Chris.
Thank you. 1 second. I just want to speak to Juliet. 1 second. Okay, thank you, members. Any questions? Mary.
Can we ask if it's possible to have the highest level of insulation, please, as part of the condition?
Simon?
Thank you. I'm afraid not, Councillor. It's inappropriate for a local planning authority to tread over into another regime's regulatory area. So, as I said before, that will be up to the building regulations to meet those standards, and anything higher than that will be a request from the neighbours to the applicant. Before I forget, courtesy to Mr. Green, who talked about the bike parking, which is a relevant issue. I wanted to come back to that. We've had this a few times before, and we entirely take your point. Wheeling your bike through your house, I have to do that at home, and I've got cardboard by the front door so I can put it down when it's wet and, you know, leave it there for a few minutes, etc. It's not ideal with however many people you have in your house, and it's even been tested at appeal once or twice at least. Not in the too distant future. Probably only a year ago we had a case where it was refused at the planning committee, I think, as opposed to delegated powers. An arrangement where you'd have to push your way through the bike. Most cases are like this. 1 or 2 of the applications on this agenda have a rear access yardway. I don't think this one does. Didn't take a note of that. So inspectors, planning inspectors who've determined planning appeals have noted it and have not used it as a reason to withhold planning permission. They've noted it's a short-term effect. So for a moment or two, while someone is pushing their bike through the property and is going through the shared living areas in the hall, it's not ideal, but it's over in a few seconds and so on. So planning inspectors on more than one occasion have decided that they didn't think they could withhold planning permission. So that's the sort of steer we've had quite clearly from the inspectorate before. So unfortunately, we wouldn't normally seek to we'd look at the circumstances of each and every one, but we wouldn't seek to withhold it on that point alone.
Mary.
Supplementary question to my last one. Could we request that we have a higher level of insulation, please? In an advisory capacity, rather than a...
As an informative.
Yeah.
Certainly happy to send an email from the planning department to the applicant asking if they could do that and making clear it's entirely up to them.
Could you use your microphone?
The developer, I've just contacted him, he's happy to add additional acoustic separation for both party walls. So if you wanted to add that, that's fine.
So can we add that as an informative?
I think an email would be more appropriate if that's all right.
Okay, well, hopefully that offers some reassurance, but we haven't, we're not there yet. But
As long as the existence of the email will be available to the public and to others, that we have taken this
Should put it on
serious
the file.
concerns.
Yeah, on the public file.
Yes, on the public file.
okay, all right. Members, comments? John.
Just on the ground floor where you walk through the corridor, bedroom 8, bedroom 7, I can't see the existing plan, but the staircase going up, the sort of slope of the staircase going up, does that allow it, is that corner cut across, so making it difficult to get under it with a bike or just walk under it? Or is it, I couldn't see the original plan because you only had the new one up. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Councillor. Could we have the plan up again, please, Karen? I think you're talking about there. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a builder. I don't know about the rake of the stairs and so on. We have got a section, but the stairs look quite steep. Obviously, they'll be to regulations. They won't be steeper than they're allowed to be. Have the correct tread depths and so on. I suspect that's just a drawing detail that perhaps isn't correctly shown. I rather doubt that you wouldn't, seeing where the stairs start there and rise quite quickly, I'm pretty sure by the time you get to this point, they'll be past head height. And I suspect that's just a line that's just not correctly drawn for head height.
Sorry, so supplementary to that then. So the bedroom 8 hasn't been, the room hasn't been stepped out at all, because that would
The room has been stepped out, as you can see here. It's somewhat more open there. If I go back again. Oh no, it seems to be the same. Let's just triple check. No, I do apologise. It's the same line. It's the same line. The bedroom there has the gap to the stairs. It's the same gap there. I'm absolutely sure there'll be building regulations to that sort of effect. It'll be for fire safety, if not anything else that would require a certain head height at certain points in circulation areas.
Okay. Members, comments? John.
one other one. On the last point on bike storage, it says that the bike storage is shown on plan, but we don't see the plan. So just to make sure, I know we've talked about it and it's going to be built and everything else, but it's not showing, it says as shown on plan and it doesn't show on plan.
That is something we requested recently, that we always saw where it was, because I think there would be room for a bicycle in the front there, actually.
Just if you allow me to check one thing for a moment. Yeah, these properties have existing, sorry, there's not a photograph to show it, but I'm looking at the aerial photograph now. Like lots of properties, there are existing sheds and outbuildings in the rear gardens. There's quite a run. Nearly all of them on either side of the property have some sort of quite substantial looking outbuildings existing. So I'm sure the intention is to keep the existing structure rather than knock it down and build another one. But that is there shown on the plan at the rear of the garden. You can see the other ones dotted along.
Okay. Anything else, members? I mean, this is... Thank you for coming and giving your deputation. It's really important that people come and we hear kind of the real-life experiences. the committee is tasked with looking at material planning considerations, and I fear that if we were to refuse this application, we wouldn't get very far at appeal, and so we wouldn't want to give you false hope. So I think I'm going to move the officer's recommendation with the conditions that are attached, and also with the understanding, I see, with the understanding from the developer that they're going to do their best around, if it's approved, around noise. Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Chris, and I suspect most committee members would probably agree with you. I don't. I think, firstly, Mr Turner, thank you very much for your honesty throughout the whole meeting. I can't say I've liked what I've heard, but honesty is always pretty essential. The permitted development regime is clearly pants, and I should be raising the issues you raised around mental health with the Equalities Officer after this meeting, copying the Chair and also Councillor Simpson as the relevant councillor for Hillsea, so local residents actually know that those issues have been raised. I'd also like to thank Mr Webb, particularly for his service on the railways during the pandemic and for keeping it going, and to him and Mr Green for coming today and giving some heart-rending deputations. I think if I had known that the House was normally have about 5 or 6 people, I probably would join Chris in this because of planning law, not because of basic morality, which seems to be absent from the planning system. However, it's 3 bedrooms. We don't know how many people are in there, and it's now 8. And that is now a significant intensification of the development in a way that doesn't normally happen with what we've done here. Being one of those committee members who was told by an unelected government inspector that didn't know planning law when refusing HMOs for various valid reasons, I'm always a bit nervous about treading in lines that can be appealed. This, to me, is a numbers game when we don't know the existing numbers. So I will not vote for this. Whether I abstain or vote against, I don't know yet. I may have to decide in 30 seconds. But I'm nervous about the intensification. If we do pass this, I would say, Chris, that we can include in the minutes that it's the settled will of this committee to ensure the maximum amount possible of insulation, so that it is a public document, as Judith has outlined, and so that everybody does know what we actually want, which sounds like what the developer wants as far as this is concerned. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Darren. And are you moving, you're not going as far as moving a motion here?
I don't think I can. I think I'll be told I don't know planning law again.
Well,
I fear that if we were to refuse this, we would lose an appeal. And that is very frustrating. But I do believe that the intensification of something is a serious concern to me, particularly when we don't know how many people are living there now.
Okay. Judith.
These are difficult decisions, and with a slightly heavy heart, I'd like to recommend that we do approve it. This is actually, the plans don't show us how much bigger this house is than normally the houses that we do give permission to for HMOs. These are quite large houses, and they're lovely family houses, lovely houses. But compared, for example, with a house in Jubilee Road in Southsea, they're almost twice the size. So I think we have no choice but to approve this application.
Thank you.
Subject to the email in the public domain requiring higher standards of insulation, and also I think relying strongly on the builders, the agent, and the applicant for making the process as easy as possible for neighbours.
Well, I think there's a commitment to doing that from the agent and developer today. Okay, so we've got a motion that's been, I've moved it and Judith has seconded it. Darren, is there anything more you want to add? Unless there is anything else, we'll move to a vote. Okay, those in favour of moving the officer's recommendations with the conditions and the additional public information around noise, please indicate. Okay, and against? Thank you.
planning permission is therefore granted.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, generally thank you for coming and giving your deputations. I wish more people would come and give deputations here. Tamworth Road.
Thank you, Chairman. We have an application at 19 Tamworth Road for the change of use from a dwelling house Class 3 to purposes falling either within Class C3 dwelling house or Class C4 house and multiple occupation. So to be clear, if planning permission is granted, that means for a 10-year period, the property can be used as either a dwelling house or a Class C4 small HMO, and move interchangeably between them without needing to apply for planning permission each time it changes for that 10-year period. At the end of that 10-year period, they would have to apply again for a new permission, and that would be considered afresh. The application has come to committee because of a call-in by Councillor Sanders and the objections received, 12 number. Been handed this written statement from the residents of Tamworth Road that I haven't managed to complete reading. I suspect a number of the comments will be made in your deputation, but I shall certainly try and pick up everything that is said in case not everything is raised. I suspect a lot of the comments were put in the objections already, but let's see about that. And we have a supplementary matters update as well, which I mustn't forget. So 19 Tamworth Road, over in Baffin's ward. It's east of the former Kingston prison, about 300 metres as the crow flies east of there, opposite Tamworth Park there, you can see. It's effectively a cul-de-sac. Further to the east, the road finishes. It's a more modern development, post-war, as you can see. That's the application property there. You can see from the aerial photograph, it's got a small back garden, and the property has been extended. It has rear access, I believe, available from Stride Avenue to the north. I assume that the owners of this property have, shared access rights, as all the other neighbours would, I assume. It's about 630 metres up to Tangier Road shops, which I think are probably the nearest local facilities. So post-war properties, you can see planning permission was granted in 2007, as the report sets out, for its extension, particularly to the side. Extension and conversion. It used to be a garage. Most of the properties have such a garage still, and the forecourt, and it's been extended at the rear and got a different porch and so on. So the application is to convert it into the flexible use class C3, continued C3, or small HMO class C4. The applicant has stated it would be for 4 single occupancy bedrooms. We'll come back to that in a moment. So with respect to the principle of a mixed and balanced community, here is the 50-metre radius with our data of known HMOs. There are no others known from our records within the 50 metres. So were this one to be approved, 1 out of 24 is 4.16%. So planning officers would deem the local balance to remain in a reasonable state and compliance with policy. We've had some newer floor plans that have come in. You may notice these are slightly different to the ones on page 30 of the report. There's been some toing and froing on the exact sizes, which takes me to the SMAT. If I may read the first part of the Supplementary Matters Report, so-called SMAT. Following the publication of the committee report, the applicant has remeasured at our request the property for accuracy and has submitted updated floor plans, which are these in front of you, pretty similar schematically to the ones in the published report, but with some slightly different dimensions and with the room sizes put on there. And we've got the revised schedule of the sizes both in the Supplementary Matters Report and I think in this presentation in a moment. So there have been some ins and outs. The main point to bear in mind is that all the rooms exceed the minimum size standards by some way, in fact, for the whole property. The main change that is proposed is at first floor level. This is an existing bathroom in the middle of the house. That is proposed to be extended into this extra landlord storage area in order to make that to size, to required size. So there you can see it. It's added on this extra metre or so across the back of it to let that meet the standard. So the property would have the shared communal kitchen diner well above the size standard and an additional communal lounge that's not required by your guidelines, a WC and one ground floor bedroom, and then access to the back garden, and the cycle storage is at the back. Then upstairs, reuse of the existing bedrooms. One of them has an ensuite. Otherwise, this is the shared bathroom for the house, and then there happens to be some spare storage as well, labelled landlord storage. So here are the updated room sizes. So these are different to set out in the report. As you can see, looking across each one, they exceed the bedrooms, the 10 metres required to some degree or other, all of them. The storage room isn't required, but is provided. The bike store, we don't have a standard size for it, but it's a decent sized store, it would appear to me. The communal kitchen, dining room, much bigger than the required standard. The lounge at the front is not required at all, but nevertheless is available. The bathroom more than meets the standard. The ensuite more meets the standard, and the WC as well. So, in officer's opinion, a good standard of accommodation would be provided. There are a number of objections set out in the report. I think we can listen to the deputation in a moment, and I can respond to that and any questions that members raise. Otherwise, taking you back to the Supplementary Matters Report, Highways comments did come in late post-publication. I'll read them out here. The Highways colleagues say Tamworth Road is a residential road with bus shops and amenities within the local vicinity. It's unclear how many bedrooms the HMO will be increased to. There were 4 shown. Therefore, there is the potential for increased instances of residents driving around the area hunting for a parking space. However, this is an issue of residential amenity for you, the planning authority, to consider. It's not considered that the size of the development would lead to a material impact to the function of the highway. Secure cycle storage should be implemented prior to occupation. We have a condition to that effect already on the report. The planning officer response to the issue about parking. It's not considered that the possible effect on parking could constitute a reason for refusal, given the limited difference between either Class 3 or Class C4 occupation. And I don't think I pointed to this on the photograph there, of course, is the forecourt, the same depth as the other ones on the street, same line. No longer a garage, of course, but nevertheless some off-road parking there as well as on the street. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Simon. Susan Thomas, over to you for your deputation. You have 6 minutes.
Mr Chairman, committee members, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here representing the residents of Tamworth Road who are opposing this proposal, and I have a letter here signed by 35 residents, all confirming this and that they're happy for me to represent them. In Précy, their main objections from the residents, as stated in your planning document, are: the proposed change of use does not fit with the ethos of the street. It's a quiet, family-orientated cul-de-sac. In fact, one resident actually moved here because of the antisocial HMOs appearing in their old road. Parking issues: there will be a major impact on other residential parking, with the potential of 4 additional plus visitors' vehicles, along with the overspill from nearby roads. Safety of children: as you can see from the plans, there's a recreation ground over the road with a play area almost opposite the proposed HMO. Children walk, cycle, and their play overflows into the road. Children attending Langston Infant Junior Schools, Westover School and Milton Cross School all use the road on their way to school. Additional vehicles or unknown occupants and their visitors could put them more at risk. How will it be guaranteed that this will be occupied by medical professionals, as is stated? This just seems a way of sweetening the application when, in fact, it will just become an HMO for possibly unemployed people or people with social issues. How will they guarantee it will be for 4 individual occupants when, A, they could all move in partners, and B, the occupancy can be changed to 6 at a later date under this planning? Once permission's been granted for one HMO, there's concern it could set a precedent. It's proposed to turn the former garage into an additional bedroom, although it was originally developed as an additional reception room, not a bedroom. There is concern over the additional noise and antisocial behaviour, which unfortunately is well documented with the HMOs in other areas of the city. And finally, no green planning application documents have been displayed on lampposts in the road. Is this not a legal requirement? Local properties, the residents there were not aware of this development happening had it not been from leaflets from the city council or from our local councillors and word of mouth from other residents. We were not aware of this until the last minute, which is why so many objections went in before Christmas. There's also concerns from the residents that if it's approved, then of course there will be the devaluation of their properties in the road. Specifically, comments with regards to the planning officer's report. 2.1 states that the existing layout comprises of a lounge, WC, kitchen, dining room, bedroom and boiler room on the ground floor level. However, the original plans in 2007 for the change of the garage did not state it was a bedroom. This was in fact converted to additional reception room for the owners at the time and is in use by the current owners as a reception room, not a bedroom. 3.1 House of Multiplication HMO Class 4. While the C4 allows use of up to 6 individuals living together, the applicant has stated this property would only have 4 single occupancy bedrooms. What guarantee is there that this is adhered to? And if it isn't, is there a penalty? What are the rules regarding partners? Potentially 4 individuals could all move somebody else in with them, or it could be changed to 6 individuals at a later date. 6.2, I had written down, states still awaiting comments from highway engineers. I appreciate they've now been provided, but at the time of me writing this, we were not aware of it, and I wanted to make sure all the facts were presented to the committee before a decision was made. 8.11 states that the first floor bathroom is considered to be under the required standard. Now again, there's been an update today. We've had no sight of that. As we saw it, the bathroom was under standard, but one of the arguments was that there were other bathrooms available. However, the ensuite is not a shared bathroom. That will be specifically for the occupiers of that bedroom. And the downstairs WC is just that. It is a small toilet and sink. Now, I notice again from today's report that the size of the downstairs WC has increased. I'd be interested to know how that has happened. That one there. Right. And also, from today's meeting, I've noticed that all the other applications I've heard today, all the rooms have been given ensuite toilets, or ensuite facilities for their individual rooms. That's not happened with this property. There is still just the one that has their ensuite. The rest would have to share one bathroom. Paragraph 8.13 states that the level of activity, whether it was a C3 townhouse by a single family, would be different if it was an HMO. All the other houses in the road, current C3, are occupied by families with adults and children. Some are sole adults, a lot are elderly adults. There are no other houses solely occupied by 6 adults, so it will be significantly different. With regards to parking, the off-road, Council's standards say there should be a requirement of 2 off-road parking spaces, but there is only 1, and in fact it's incredibly small, and you'll notice that most residents don't park on their driveways. You could see from the photo the current owner does not park on their driveway because any longer vehicles, larger vehicles, overspill and people have to walk on the road. Again, with regards to the numbers who could be in a Class C3 dwelling house or a Class 4 HMO, there are no houses in the road that have got 4 or more vehicles. So potentially putting in more people in here will result in more people having vehicles. And as I say, this case, no one in the road has 4 or more vehicles. There's 3 types of parking spaces on the road in front of each block of 2, so there will be an impact on adjoining properties. There's no assurances on occupation, so we would like to know whether that would have an impact on the scheme as to whether or not the people will be medical professionals. And I'd just like confirmation that the numbers proposed of 4 may in fact be raised to 6 once planning is approved, which will result in increased sanitary facilities. That was paragraph 836. An extra thing just from today, I noticed that a sold sign has now gone up outside the house today. So can the applicant confirm whether this has been sold as a private family residence, C3, or whether they have sold it with planning permission in place, hopefully, for a HMO? Thank you for your time, and I ask you to take these residents' concerns into account when you make your decision.
Thank you. Thank you for your deputation. We absolutely will. Mr. Boyd, over to you for your deputation, 6 minutes. If I could just ask you to pop your microphone off. There you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Councillors. The National Planning Policy Framework, which was created on the 27th of March 2012, it sets out within Section 8, subsection 91A, that local authorities should encourage mixed-use development. This is a mixed-use development proposal. It also encourages mixed balanced communities. And in Annex 2, it states affordable housing, either for sale or for rent, and for those not met by the market. It goes on to instruct including housing essential for local workers. It's an interesting words, local workers. Not far from this property is the hospital. Now, we manage a number of these properties in near vicinity to the hospitals, and the tenants are nurses or student doctors. Now, in order to meet the National Planning Policy Framework, Portsmouth City Council endeavoured to produce a core strategy, and may I refer to your SPD as amended on October 2019. The public had plenty of time in consultation to put their word to where they can and cannot be. In fact, they had from July to September 2019 to have their input on this SPD. Now, the property itself, there are concerns of the level of occupancy. The room that's set out as landlord storage falls way beyond 6.51 square metres. It is not possible for that to be used lawfully as a bedroom, not only by your own planning terms, but also if becoming an HMO will be subject to a licence under sections 1 to 4 of the Housing Act 2004. I know that planning officers themselves will refer to the private sector housing over whether or not a house would be acceptable under the said legislation. The property can be argued, well, you're indicating it's for nurses, it may end up as a variety of, let's just say, social requirements. The property itself could be used for professional sharers, and as we all know, many of the councillors themselves, even gone through university at some point, would have stayed in an HMO. There's a specific need for requirement of this style of housing, which is also set out in the National Planning Policy Framework, that need, whether the economy requires the style of housing, the council should make a policy that helps to support. 50-metre radius, there isn't a single one in a 50-metre radius. So let's refer back to mixed balance communities. The community is already imbalanced by C3s. This one puts it in 22%. there is a protection for the objectors to understand that they can only have 10% in a 50-metre radius. This does meet the SPD. It's in a commutability area, and I would see a refusal on this to be unreasonable, and would encourage this to be approved today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Saunders.
Thanks, Chris. I was very interested about the New Era Agency objection. I mean, he talks about being imbalanced by family homes when the housing need in the city is for more family homes, which is why the council is looking at building 3 or 4 bedroom homes, because there is, in fact, an imbalance against them. As far as affordable housing is concerned in the Baffins area, well, good luck. I've been trying to move back for a few years, and at the moment it's £1,300 a month in the prison, which unsurprisingly can't be sold for that. So I'm intrigued in affordable housing. Again, this counts as generating affordable housing. Now I've got that off my chest. Some of the more interesting things about the development. I sympathise a lot with local residents, but I have a sneaking suspicion I know where this committee might be going. So I'll focus my comments firstly on the parking standards. This scheme is below the city's parking standards, whether it is C3 or whether it is C4. Now, you would argue that that's fine because that's what it is at the moment. However, the home was built before the parking standards came in. It is the person who chooses to change these things. And either way, this will still have not enough parking. Simon, could you please pull up the first slide you did of the road? Because I want to...
Hang on.
Oh, you're
Really, it's not a presentation, it's a deputation. It's just
I'm trying my best. I just want Simon to get accurate, because it's about the nature of the road itself, which has been described as a cul-de-sac.
deputation, Darren.
Okay. Well, then the nature of the road is such. In fact, a cul-de-sac is one way of describing it. It's, in fact, effectively a one-way road. The road is so narrow, with Tamworth Park on the south side and the garages on the other side, that the only way you can actually pass is through a turning circle at the Kirple Estate end of the road at the bottom. So therefore, any increase in parking and any reduction below our parking standards will have a significant impact on traffic in the road, a disproportionate impact, much greater than anything else. So in terms of parking, I believe that because it falls below our parking standards, I believe there is a valid reason to refuse that would survive an approval. However, should you choose to approve it, the other unique aspect of this application is that actually in the applicant's documents to the council, which have been available on the website, and in the presentation today from Chris from New Era Agencies, he's talked about professionals. He's talked about health workers at QA. That was also put forward in the planning documents. I've never seen that in 18 years as a councillor. So I take what developers say seriously. So I think that if you are minded to approve this today, I would suggest that you can do so with 2 restrictions. Firstly, that it is purely for professionals, preferably from who are currently working in the health sector. And I'm sure if you do that, the council's licensing team will be delighted to enforce that as part of the inspections. And secondly, that you restrict it to the 4 people who the agent has and the developer has described as living there. And I think if you do those 2 restrictions, you may be able to persuade some of the local residents that this may be a valid property. Apologies for wanting a presentation, Chris, and I've exceeded my powers again, but I'm delighted to do so. Thank you, colleagues.
Wouldn't expect anything less.
My fault. There is one concern that the residents wanted to raise, which is in Simon's presentation, which is that the local people believe that actually there's no rear access to the property. There is some sort of shared access, but in this case, there's no reared one.
Okay. Thank you. Well, Simon, do you want to pick up on some of the things? We'll hopefully try to, before we move on to the body of the thing. No.
Thank you, Chairman, and both to the speakers as well. I'll go through chronologically all the issues raised by Susan Thomas and then by Councillor Sanders. In terms of parking, could we have the photos up then, please? I think Councillor Sanders and Susan Thomas has said it's a relatively narrow road. I think that's the only photograph I've got. It is relatively narrow once you've got cars parked on one side. So I think cars may have to dodge in and out, waiting for others to pass along that stretch of road, however long it is. And yes, there's a turning circle at the eastern end. Outside that image, let's see, no, it's not in there either. So the property has the one parking space. I think Susan Thomas said it's short. It's I've got a dimension on it somewhere. It's not quite to standard depth. A small car could fit on there if someone was able to change cars or had such a car. It's 4.4 metres deep, front to back. The standard is 5 metres. So the comparison, as Councillor Sanders alluded to, is between the existing property as a C3 or C4. It's proposing to use either. The property's already been expanded. Whether or not the current use of individual rooms that Susan Thomas raised, whether it's a bedroom currently or not, and so on, that doesn't really matter. It's what the current proposal shows. It shows 4 bedrooms, an occupancy of 4. We'll come back to that in a moment. It's an extended property, so again, like some of the other applications we've heard this morning, it could be occupied by one person rattling around in there on their own, or by a family of a number of people. So the difference between a Class C3 and C4 is minimal at best, quite likely. Certainly not enough to, in officer's opinion, to withhold planning consent on the issue of parking. People will have to make their own choices, whether this was bought by a family moving in or by occupiers of an HMO moving in. Each of them will decide, do I have a car? Where do I work? What do I do in my life? Do I want a car or not? Can I change? Do I bring it or not? What's the local parking conditions like? And whether it's a family use or an HMO, people will decide whether or not they want to occupy it and how they decide to move around the city. As I said at the start of the presentation, it's within walking distance, 630 metres of Tangier Road shops, and walking distance also of, I counted 4 bus lines, 2, 2A, 12 and 13. And although on the eastern edge of the city, we're not a huge city, it's compact, it's flat, and people can get around on foot and cycling and e-scooters and so on as well. So I wouldn't see a reason to withhold planning permission on the basis of parking. The safety of children was raised. I'm not sure how the occupation as an HMO or a family dwelling changes the safety of children. I don't believe that to be the case. How could it be guaranteed that the purported medical professionals would occupy it? There's no guarantee whatsoever. The planning system doesn't exist to, in this instance, to say who can or can't occupy this dwelling. Whether as a family they've got to be in a certain profession or age group or anything like that. No. Same for an HMO occupation. If planning permission is granted for the flexible use, there would be no planning reason to restrict the occupation. The occupancy of up to 4, as we've tried to explain fairly briefly in the report, the applicant has said it's for 4 people. But from the size of the bedrooms and so on, there could be greater occupation, and Class C4 is up to 6 people. We thought that it's best left to the licensing regime. We've noted that the current sanitary facilities wouldn't allow up to 6 persons. This will also get on to your question, Susan Thomas, about the en-suites. While a lot of the other conversions of Victorian and Edwardian properties typically provide en-suites, they don't have to. The guidance is for 1 to 4 persons, there would be 1 bathroom and 1 WC. The WC can be within the bathroom, shower room. For 5 persons, it's 1 bathroom and a separate WC. And for 6 persons, it is 2 bathrooms and 2 WCs. 1 can be separated. So at the moment, there aren't there aren't 2 bathrooms. Just to remind members, we've got the extended bathroom upstairs. That would be the shared bathroom for the property. And for 4 people, That's all that's required. But additionally, there's an ensuite for this lucky person, and there's a WC on the ground floor. Were it to be up to 6 people, it would need a second bathroom. That's not in front of us. It could be achieved, but we think it's best to leave that up to the licensing regime. They would deal with that. Clearly, with changes, we didn't want to get into too many hypothetical situations as to how it could be changed to achieve that. I think it could be changed, but that's not in front of us at the moment. So again, although I understand the point about 4 occupiers and so on, this property, we think is the occupancy is best left to the licensing system in due course, were it to be approved. The question about no site notice and residents were not aware of the application had it not been for councillors. I don't know if the postal service failed somehow, but letters did leave the department and were sent out to the individual occupiers. I don't know whether any individual occupiers received them. That's unfortunate if that didn't happen. There's a site notice was displayed. How long it was up for before it might have been taken down, I don't know, but it was displayed, and we have a photograph of that. Devaluation of property is not a material planning consideration. Just going through the notes. Activity and noise. I can't agree that the activity and noise would be any materially different between the property. It's not been extended as some of the other ones, which has raised some concerns from members. This is within the existing confines of the property. No permitted development or other extensions proposed. So you could have a large family with boisterous kids, etc., or you could have 4 individuals living here quite quietly, or in reverse. So it's not possible to say that there will be a definite change, and therefore to hang any decision on that. It was mentioned that the sold sign has gone up. The ownership of the site currently or past or present doesn't matter. Planning permission runs with the land. If planning permission is granted, a new owner can buy it and operate it as they see fit within the confines of the planning law. So I think actually, Councillor Sanders, I picked up on your points already raised, the main points about whether or not it could be restricted to health sector professionally, not in a planning reason, I'm afraid. And we don't believe there's any need to restrict it to 4 persons, because we believe the licensing regime would do that if it felt necessary, or if licensing felt it could be occupied by more. With a C4 consent granted, that will be allowable under the existing permission, but members can decide about that. Lastly, the concern that residents don't think there is rear access. Actually, I can see why there might not be, actually, if this is a later development than the housing to the north. So it wouldn't surprise me, actually, thank you for that there may not be rear access. So they would have to push the bikes through the property. We get back to the same argument as we looked at on previous properties. They'd have to push it through the kitchen dining room to get to the French doors to go out into the cycle storage. Not sure that you'd want one on the front. Maybe room for one there, but if approved, we'd have to see about that. Right, thank you. There appears to be an access there down the side. If that's, it looks like it's within the domain of the application site, could take you through to the back to provide that rear access. I think I've answered all the main points there, Chairman.
Thank you, Simon. Hopefully that was useful. The bit I want to pick up on is that I think it was mentioned during the deputation about the potential for this setting a precedent. We don't operate in that way. Each application is considered on its own merits that comes before us, so that wouldn't be the case. Members, I hope that was useful to go through those things. Shah.
Thank you. Just a general comment, actually. When we say mixed communities, I didn't understand. Mixed community means families and professionals, so what about the common man?
In this instance, we're talking of a mixture of residential type rather than who occupies them necessarily, because in a family home or an HMO, anyone could whatever occupation, unemployed, employed, whatever sector of the economy they might work in. So it's the type of accommodation, i.e. family dwelling houses C3 or HMOs C4 sui generis. That's what we're talking about in terms of that mix.
Okay. Members, anything else? John?
Chair, can we just have a look at that plan of the updated figures? It's just for clarity for me, really. Just the overall dimensions. It looks like the plan, not the actual figures themselves. It just looked like the ensuite at the back overhangs the back of the house, and I don't understand. You look at the figures, 4,751 and nearly 2 metres, so that's 6.7. And the bike storage on the other side is 1.3 and 4.7 comes to about 6 metres. So I couldn't understand. I know the back extends out a bit, but those figures don't seem to correlate to the plan. It's probably my ignorance.
Thank you, Councillor. I was just looking at the overhead pictures just to see if they are actually in line in reality. This is a schematic plan, unfortunately. It's not a proper surveyed plan, which may explain any potential apparent discrepancies and whether or not there are any measurements as well that might just also vary by a few centimetres. I haven't checked to see about how they compare at the moment.
While you're calculating, we can see clearly the side access there.
I can't explain that difference in the. You're talking about the dimensions down the right-hand side.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at
those
look at the ensuite sits over the spike storage. 2515 seems the right capacity, and the back of the house. Okay, I take the point. I'm not talking centimetres, but I take that it's about 3.2 and 3.35. So you've got 6.7 there, haven't you? Well, 6.8. Okay, we're not talking much about that. But on the side, running down that side, you've got roughly 6 metres there running down the side on the ground floor, and on the other side, and I know that's the bit where it looks like you've got an overhang on the ensuite, to me.
Yep, I can't explain that.
And it's bigger than a couple of centimetres.
Yeah, the walls, I don't think you're saying this, but the wall doesn't necessarily have to be above the other wall. Of course, so you're just simply saying those dimensions do not equate to those, although I can...
Those dimensions don't equate, then, when we're talking about that ensuite bathroom and adjustments of the size for the inside for the other, it just makes me wonder.
No, I think you're quite right. That's a good point. I've noticed some of these sorts of issues with the submitted plans. I've concluded, though, that because the rooms are so well clear of the dimensions, on that side of the property, you've got bedrooms 1 and 2, and they're very clearly beyond the required standards. And then, of course, the communal dining is also very large, and then the lounge. So I agree there does appear to be a question around that, but otherwise in the round it looks acceptable.
Does that mean
Sorry.
Go on.
I was only going to say that if that's, I'd like that clarified, because if that's in question, then I take your point, Simon, about all the other figures are well above. But if that figure's in question, then it begs the question about other figures, doesn't it? Because then you're taking those as read.
Thank you. Judith.
Just to build on that, it questions for me the notion that the so-called master bedroom is in fact the size on that table, because you'd have to push the whole plan down a bit to avoid it being apparently an overhang. In fact, we'd already have a discrepancy between the figures on this table here and the figures in the report we were given, when the sizes were different.
Simon, we don't appear to have much confidence in...
I can't say anything else.
I think unless we can resolve this, we need some definite clarity to put into the minutes at the very least. I mean, there's quite a lot of variation between what we had in our report, and I went through, as I was doing, ticked and crossed and put question marks beside it, and what we're seeing on the wall there doesn't really bear all that much relation to it.
Simon, you've gone as far as you can in terms of room sizes and things. Members, thoughts?
Well, my thought is if you can't clarify that figure or those figures, and I take the point that Simon's made about if it's a few centimetres. I'm not saying that. I've sat here for many years or a few years and seen those figures and quite happy with that. But given the fact that you can't clarify that, I'm a bit worried about the other figures. Given the fact, as Judith said, that we've actually the figures have been updated and the adjustments have been made to the main bathroom and things. If we can't establish the outside figures overall, how can we establish all the other figures?
Chair, a suggestion might be if an officer can really clarify that and nail it down and then minute it, we could make a decision at the end of the meeting.
Chair, the figure in the table or the figure on the plan, they're to the right size requirements. I don't know if that assists in any way. Simon?
That's the question being raised.
Will there be time?
Given it involves an overhang, which we wouldn't want.
I can say I think the question is broader. It's what Councillor Smith is saying is if one set of numbers, if we're dancing around several sets of numbers, it is very difficult to feel confident in giving approval to the application as it stands. We could perhaps make some notes as to were it to be within the standards, the laid down standards that we have, at a future case we might be inclined to meet it again, but I don't think that takes us any further forward because we won't have approved it. We would then have to approve it on its merits when it turned up again.
I'm not sure this is going to be resolvable today.
Is the applicant's agent able to clarify for us?
The storeroom, which is located on there, wasn't measured because it didn't make up as part of the livable space. The intention for the storeroom will be for cycle storage to fall in line with your parking standards. The rest of the house was measured, and it was measured myself. I used a Bosch laser measure. I double-checked it twice on the basis that the scaling of the property did not quite match what they had on the footprint from the design as it sits now from the previous planning application. So the measurements that were taken do now fall in line very much with that with that scaling, and I'm sure obviously the planning officers will be able to obviously verify that. So the room sizes are very, very, very much accurate. The storeroom maybe is not, but as I said, it just represents a storeroom at the moment, which is intended to be for cycle storage.
Chairman, so if the applicant, the agent is saying, I think, therefore, that the... Could we have the plans up again, please, Karen? Thank you. I said that the storeroom was not measured, but the other habitable rooms have been, bedroom 1 on the ground floor, bedroom 2 above, and the ensuite. So therefore, we can rely upon those figures, which all exceed the minimum standards. So as to the cycle storage, whether or not that is big enough, there's perhaps a question mark about that. So perhaps if it could be relevant, we've got a condition already for cycle storage prior to first occupation within C4. Secure and weatherproof cycle storage shall be provided at the site and retained thereafter. We could amend that to read that we need detailed plans to be submitted so that if and when that is measured, if this is approved, we can decide whether or not this cycle storage is big enough. If it isn't, we can have separate cycle storage provided, for example, in an extra outbuilding in the back garden there.
But it's a question of confidence now, though. Judith?
I think setting a condition about that would satisfy me, but it's got to go into all the measurements because, as Councillor Smith pointed out at the beginning of this part of the item, you've got the bedroom 1 meant to be a mirror with bedroom 2, and the plan is not clear about whether the top floor will then fit on top of the bottom floor. In fact, it looks like it would overhang, and that is not something we're willing to approve.
I was just going to say, is the agent then saying he's accurately measured every other room in the house, but that side measurement at 1.372 he didn't measure?
Yes, I can confirm I measured every single habitable room within the property. The only room I didn't measure was the cycle storage proposal, which at the moment is large enough for a gymnasium, and it's where the tank room is.
Judith, could I just ask you to pop your microphone off?
Well, I mean, I was just going to say, still the maths doesn't work.
Simon?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Just to come back, Smythe, about overhang, because this is schematic, it's not. I don't believe these are particularly drawn as per the dimensions. It's a schematic, I think. That may.
No, that's not the reason. It's the numbers. If you add them up,
Yeah. So
they just add up and look
so
like an overhang.
The unknown numbers. Well, there's no extension proposed to the property. The front elevation of that bedroom sits above the front elevation there, and the rear elevation of the cycle store sits above there. So there's no extension proposed, even if some of the numbers don't quite tally and so on. And the fact is that all the rooms bar the cycle storage have been measured. I think we can give some confidence to the stated room sizes given in total, in terms of not necessarily the dimensions that, well, certainly that dimension for the cycle storage, but otherwise the calculated room sizes are said to be accurate, be measured with a laser calculator, etc. So I think it's just the cycle storage that's in question, and I have that recommendation for a condition.
Chair, I'm happy with that condition, as long as it includes a statement of the actual widths, because we've got 2 different tables and a different plan. We've got 3 different figures, and I think it would be irresponsible for us to approve an application unless the condition makes it clear that you know, we need a on file somewhere. There needs to be a agreed set of dimensions, and I agree with you. It's extremely unlikely that that would change the acceptability of the scheme.
Smith, what do you think?
That's fine. I'm happy with
You're
that.
happy with that as well. Councillor Dent, you.
Just before I disappear, Chris, as you know, I've got to go. Just doing a quick calculation, very few of those figures add up. Very few. And you're not talking millimetres, you are talking like 700 mil, 300 mil. That's quite a lot. As you know, I've got to disappear rapidly, so I will leave it to the rest of them. But my opinion is that basically we need accurate dimensions so we can make a correct decision on this.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dent. Thank you for being here this morning. John.
Chair,
We'll have to
I
make some
wasn't.
progress at some point. by
So
the way.
yeah, I was happy with the explanation so far. I'm happy with what Councillor Smythe said about adding those provisions in. The other bits, I was only talking about that. Oh, it looked like there was an overhang. The other bits, I accept that under normal. Yeah, there is the gentleman's put in there. There's the gap in the room, so there is going to be small tolerances, as Simon said as well. I mean, it was just a side measurement. There was one. The bit, it was a 500 mil. Is a half a metre is quite a lot.
Okay. So the view of the committee is that should we make some progress on this? Are there any other comments?
Can we hear what the net comment is going to be written then? The stipulation,
Some wording. Should we have some-
the condition is going to be, and if to see whether we are happy with that, because that might enable more of us to come on board.
Absolutely. Are you able to take a few minutes
Yes.
to come up with the wording? or have
Well,
you got
I
some?
could just read more or less the main skeleton of it. So, condition 2 is the approved plans. Councillor Smythe has asked that we approve the stated total room size of each room. So not so much the dimensions, but the room sizes stated. I think you said we'd like to set those out or make sure it's in compliance with those stated numbers.
We need a single version. We need a single version of the plans and the dimensions. And I accept that plans are sometimes more representational than ideal, but just need something that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I give more credence to the calculated total numbers of the floor sizes than the actual dimensions given along the sides, because they don't all add up. It's true. And again, because they well clear of the minimum standards, I was confident they would nevertheless all comply. So it's how you actually want to manage it.
Page 20 in our report was the lowest levels, the smallest looking rooms, and they would have been acceptable in my mind. So, but we do want to make sure that it is on record that we are concerned about accuracy of that sort, and that we need to make sure that the final approved plans are accurate. Please. We could either do that by deferring, which is always a nuisance and costly for everybody, or we could do it by a quite strong condition. Delegating authority to you to see that and satisfy yourself that it still complies.
The trouble with stating it needs to be something, if it isn't, is a difficulty. So a deferral might be the better way of achieving that. I mean, absolute certainty.
For me, I'd like us to have a definitive set. Some information here in the room, and deferral is, as you say, is costly.
I feel very strongly about that, but
Okay.
I know it does cost more to the council overall.
I think in terms of feeling comfortable about this, certainly for me, I think I'd like it to come back here. Peter.
I was simply going to build on, wanted that the condition stated that all dimensions exceed our minimum criteria, which should be a given, but given that we are doubting the data, that is the reason why we're insisting upon it. We celebrate the fact we have the strongest limitations in the South Coast cities, etc., etc. Let's make sure we're hitting those.
But the danger is, by saying it has to be something, and then if it isn't, you've granted planning permission for something that it actually isn't.
So if that is the direct choice that we are facing, I pick up on what the chair is saying, and what Judith is saying is that even though there might be a cost, I think we have to be reasonably sure about what we are making our decisions on, and if the applicant has failed to give us the assurance that we require upon that, then I'm sorry, there will be a delay before their application comes forward.
Thank you. Julia.
Yes, I'm with Simon. I think because there's quibbles over the figures, I think we need to defer.
Thank you. Okay, well, look, we've had legal advice as well. I'm moving motion to defer the application, unless there is anything else. Would members like to indicate if they agree with that as a way forward? Peter, you're not...
I keep flashing on and off, Chair, because I was going to second your proposal, but...
Probably do need a seconder. That's quite
I second your proposal, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. Okay, those in favour, please indicate.
The application has been deferred for reasons of the plans.
Okay, I'm sorry that took a while, and that will come back to us at a future date. Should we press on? Break? 10-minute leg stretch? Okay, all right. If everybody could be back at 5 past, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, thank you, members. Welcome back. Okay, let's continue with today's agenda, and we move on to Fearson Road.
Thank you, Chairman. We have an application at 26 Fearon Road. Excuse me if that's not the correct pronunciation. It's for the change of use from a Class C3 dwelling house to a flexible use Class C3 or Class C4 HMO, which, to be clear, means that if planning permission is granted within the next 10 years, the premises can be used interchangeably from C3 back to C4 and so on, as many times or as little or not at all as they wish, without the need for planning permission within that 10-year period. The applications come to the Planning Committee because of objections from 23 neighbours. We have deputation, Councillor Simpson, I believe, and the agent, Mr. Hill, is here. And I have some supplementary matters to take you through shortly. So Fearon Road is just north of Stubbington Avenue in Hilsea. It's at the western end of the Stubbington Road, east-west. So it's 515 metres walk from the property to the London Road roundabout at the top end of North End Centre, just to place it for you. There you can see the application site. This one, I believe, has a rear access for cycle storage access, and that indeed would be the cycle store at the back there. Mid-terrace, as you could see from the plan a moment ago, and there it is in the photographs. The property would have existing rear elements consolidated and provided with flat roof from the pitch roofs, and then a rear dormer extension, both provided under permitted development in order to expand the property, as the applicant has shown. I'll come back to that in a moment. With respect to the mixed and balanced communities and 10% rule, there is one confirmed HMO towards the southern end of the radius there presently, with the second application site being the current site. If approved, 2 out of 62 properties would be 3.2%, well below the 10% policy threshold, so in accordance with your policy for a mixed and balanced community. The existing floor plans. These are the rear elements. They've got different pitches and so on that would be consolidated and built up with a new flat roof, insulation, etc. And then you've got the main body of the house from the main wall there and upstairs. Existing plans. Oops, excuse me. You can still see the cutout there, but this is the consolidated rear end. So, presently shown, the application has a shared living room at the front, then the kitchen dining room here with a WC off that, and then a bedroom with a lot of space there, but also the main body of the bedroom here, and it's en suite, ground floor. First floor, 3 bedrooms, 3 en suites, 1, 2, and 3. And in the extended roof, again, 2 more bedrooms with their own en suites, 1 and 2. All the rooms meet and exceed the minimum size standards, and the bedrooms, I should say, as do the en suites. So on page 41, the second entry, the kitchen dining area, is just a little bit short of the 22.5 that is required, but there is the front lounge or living room proposed as well. So the combination of the two communal rooms would provide a good standard of accommodation, and if you purely added them together, way beyond the 22.5 required. The objection points set out in the report, the normal range or a fairly standard expected range of concerns from residents about parking, noise, house prices, water pressure and so on. None of those factors we consider are so demonstrably proven as to withhold planning permission. If I take you back to the supplementary matters, I'll read it out on page 2. The officer report notes at paragraph 8.11 that the kitchen dining room does not meet the required space standard, but that the arrangement is acceptable because of the separate lounge also proposed. We go on to propose to secure this degree of communal living space by way of condition, which would read the following: room is not to be used as sleeping accommodation by any person and shall be retained for communal living space. That is the ground floor living room shown on plan 096-PL02. The reason, in order to provide suitable living arrangements in accordance with the SPD. So that would be an extra condition were you minded to approve the application. Licensing, we heard back yesterday. I'm not sure why they didn't manage to see the plans. They were there all the time, but we've got their comments now. They have asked, is it clear that the minimum ceiling height is provided in the second floor bedroom? That has been confirmed now by the applicant. Secondly, they have asked if the room meets the required widths, which is, it was this bedroom in particular, I think, that they were referring to. They wanted to make sure it was more than 2.15 wide. It is 2.43. And then lastly, they asked about the extra living room. They said, were the front living room to become a 7th bedroom, the kitchen diner alone would not meet the required space standard. Indeed, thank you for that. That is already noted in your report, but because it is an extra and is proposed on the plans, that's a future matter should it arise. But as it stands, we've got a kitchen diner slightly undersized, but the extra living room at the front provides a more than satisfactory standard of accommodation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Simon. Mr. Hill.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make this deputation. I'd like to confirm this property has had its plans approved by Building Control. Myself and my business are passionate about providing high quality HMOs. I'd like to thank the planning officer for their comprehensive report and also for their recommendation for conditional permission. One note I did have is understand the pressure the planning department are under, and therefore this criticism is not aimed individually at any members of staff or those in charge, more about the process and the workload. If you go on to Portsmouth City Council website, it says your planning application will typically be decided within 8 weeks. This application was submitted in May 2023, so we're 8 months into the process. Frustratingly, if you look at the SMAT, you'll notice the comments that had to go into the SMAT. The only reason they had to go into the SMAT is because apparently, according to the online submission, Housing Standards only got asked for their information 2 days ago, and they replied fortunately the next day. But there has been 8 months that they could have been consulted, so if we could try and consult them sooner so that we have the chance to react to that, well, that would be brilliant moving forwards. As you will have heard, all of the points that were raised by the SMAT have been addressed, so the floor plan has been amended to show that the licensing standards met. The bedroom is 2.43 wide, and obviously the communal area has already been addressed. However, the rear bedroom on the ground floor is actually over 14 metres squared, so although it's not shown by the plans, potentially we could reduce that slightly, and that would mean that the communal area on its own would meet the minimum standards that were required. I want to confirm that, as mentioned already, the property does have rear access, as can be seen on the committee report diagram, and is also detailed in point 3.4. This is via an alleyway which runs behind numbers 24, 22, etc. Comes out alongside number 2 Fearon Road. This is hugely beneficial for bike storage at the property, although if required, people could bring the bikes through the property, and we put in hardwired floor so that it doesn't damage the property in any way. We also provide a cleaner as well. It's typically also considered to be a benefit by the fire risk assessor. The property, its use and design are fully compliant with the Portsmouth Plan 2012, as well as the National Planning Policy Framework, the Portsmouth Plan, PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23. The highways engineer who was consulted said they had no objection. They class Fearon Road as an unclassified residential street, and they said that they don't think it would have a material impact on the highway network. The proposal does not also, according to them, increase parking demand. They said it was the same in terms of the parking standard that's required. The Waste Reduction Initiatives team leader said they had no objection. There appears to be enough room in the forecourt for the required bins. It needs one 360-litre refuse and one 360-litre recycling, which we have to inform them within 3 weeks before the development, which we will do. As you will see from the report, the number of HMOs is only at 3.2%. Local residents have raised concerns about drainage. We upgrade all of the drainage as part of the conversion. All of the works are carried out on a permitted development. We also provide a DAB tank, which is basically a cold water storage tank, as well as 2 cylinders for hot water storage. We have a waste carrier's license to get rid of any waste. We also use a professional specialist HMO letting agency. The block-built bin and bike store, which looked like it was a bomb shelter or something like that previously, we will be repurposing for the purposes of bike storage, and we'll submit those plans to the council. As you already know, Portsmouth has some of the toughest HMO regulations, so I'll spend the last 2 minutes talking about the elements that refer to all applications, but specifically towards this one. So, according to the latest Office of National Statistics estimate, the population of Portsmouth is 208,000 people, which puts it as the second most densely populated city in the country. But also, interestingly, there's considered to be a very high percentage of young working age people. Also, the population has grown over the last 19 years, and it is expected to continue to grow between 2021 and 2030. It's expected to go up, particularly with regards to working age population. 86.2% of people in Portsmouth rent a property. The national average is 35%. So we have more than double the number of people in our city who rent properties. Therefore, I would urge you very strongly that given this property complies with your documents that you need it to comply with, to please grant planning permission, because you have a desperate need for rental accommodation. Where else could somebody rent a property if they didn't go to a private landlord? They could go to the council. If you go to the council's website, portsmouth.gov.uk, it specifically says many people who join the waiting list will never get a property through Portsmouth City Council. What was the average time of the last 10 applications that are on the front page of that website, I hear you ask? 626 days. 626 days. Those people were regarded as high priority. So if you're a high priority person in Portsmouth who needs a property and you go to the council, at the moment it takes 626 days. The quickest was 167 days. The slowest of those 10 applications was 3,755 days. 10 years to get a property from the council. So this city desperately needs private landlords to provide accommodation for its double the average statistic of rental persons. What else is happening in the world? Interest rates have previously gone up.
I'll tell you what else is happening in the world. You're running out of time.
Well, 15% of landlords, according to Rightmove, are selling at the moment. Ultimately, what that means is, in a city where there's a huge demand for affordable homes, there is a diminishing supply, there is an increase in the number of young people looking for accommodations, and we're not able to reach the supply with our own housing stock. I would urge you that for applications such as this that are fully compliant, you give planning permission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Russell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Simon actually for clarifying some things and some facts. I love facts. Facts are my favourite. Before I start, I want to come back to parking because this area, when you start going towards North End, the parking is terrible. I mean, I talk about Shadwell and Over and Oriel have parking issues. It gets systematically worse as we go further south into North End. Could Simon clarify what the situation has to be for parking to be a material change? Because it seems to be, unless the house is 1 metre wide, with lots of bedrooms and a very narrow, it never seems to be like it ever counts for anything. But yet, time and time again, it's people that live in the area, that know the area better than anyone else, know the habits of that area, are saying about parking. So if Simon could clarify that, that would be brilliant. I'm going to just glance over because it should be to the chair, but just to guarantee that this is staying as a 6-bedroom HMO with the living room as you proposed. It's not going to be what we've had a lot of applications that come in 6 and then suddenly turn into 7 6 months later. I'm not getting a nod, but I would take it as this is an honest application. Now, Simon mentioned, another Simon, so it was 2 Simons, mentioned about future discussion if it was going to change into a 7-bedroom HMO. Now, in my hand here, a resident's given me 2 plans. And these 2 plans is one for the one that we're seeing today, and another plan for 7 bedrooms where the living standard is extended. I'm going to pass it around and you can look around. It is the official plans, and there's 2 of them. This is residents gave this to me. I did not acquire this myself.
Has Simon seen these plans? Well, I want to know if Simon's...
Russell, I think we need to, let's, you know, earlier I did mention this to Councillor Sanders earlier. Just
okay, thank you. So, you as a committee, we have to act upon genuine applications and not disingenuous. The fact that we've got 2 plans here, one that clearly is going to convert that living room space, and actually some of the ones that have come up, Thurban Road comes to mind, that had a really nice living space that then suddenly 6 months later came in and became a 7th bedroom. I really feel that the applications are not genuine, and and it seems to be there's this 1 step and then to the 7th step. And we've got evidence here that it clearly is not what's submitted today. I don't know what you want to do with that, but I know that previously when we've had HMOs and there's been disingenuous about what the rooms are for, that have been refused. They're here if you want to look at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, members, questions? Judith.
Just one simple question before we get on to those sort of issues. I had always understood you had to have 2 doors between a lavatory and a kitchen. This only shows 1 door. Am I wrong, or has the building regulations changed?
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. You'll be referring to that relationship. I don't know the answer, so we asked licensing that specific question, but they seemed to miss that when they replied. The agent may be able to tell us. In either event, were that to be a problem, I imagine, sorry, looking at the wrong agent, the applicant, I'm sure, will be able to put the door with some minor internal changes and have the door into the hall and close off that. So I don't either way see a difficulty with that.
Saying to us we have to look at the plans in front of us, and that for me would be sufficient to refuse it, because we shouldn't have a lavatory door opening out into a kitchen, and the plans that's what the plans show. It's a simple matter for me, as you've many times told us it should be.
Yeah, I would say because the sanitary provision across the property is so good with ensuite bathrooms and so on, and it's a lesser matter, if I can put it that way. And as I say, although were they to be required to move that door to comply with building regulations, I think it's a straightforward matter. The agent has said the plans have already been approved by building control, so I imagine with the layout in front of us, so it may be that the regulations aren't as we might think they are. I don't know for sure.
I mean, I think can we put a condition on that says you must have double door protection of the lavatory? I think that is so near to where you're actually cooking, and somebody opens the door after whatever they're doing in the loo. It's not good.
Thank you. I appreciate your concern, but I think it has to be a matter for building regulations and licensing. It's to that level of detail. If they require something different to the plan shown, then that's what needs to be happen. The applicant has said that these plans have already been approved. But,
Just that if we are minded later on to approve this application, I would want a condition that required that to be done. I mean, this is right in the face of the person cooking.
Okay. Members, questions? It was mentioned earlier around the bedroom 6. There seemed to be an offer, I think, of reducing the size of bedroom 6 to increase the communal.
Yeah, happy to do that. The bedroom's more than the bedroom's 14 metres squared, so we could theoretically reduce the size of the bedroom such that it's above 10 metres squared, but such that the communal area is 22.5 on its own. Equally, the property doesn't currently require that toilet as part of the plans or as building regs. Building regs have been approved. I've got the approval document here, but we don't have to fit that toilet out. If you want it to be a storage cupboard, no problem. If you want it to be a bathroom off of the living room, no problem. However you want it to be.
I mean, is the reduction of one room and the increase for the communal area a condition that we could add?
well, so the agent is talking about somewhere some sort of alteration to that bedroom here, I imagine. That end. Okay, and then enlarge the communal kitchen dining in some way. Oh, I see. Just widen it out or something like that. Yes, I see. Yeah. To go back to your point, Councillor Smythe, that is of more importance, I would say, in terms of the understanding exactly what we're being asked to approve. And since we've got clear plans in front of us, I wouldn't particularly want to approve some other arrangement. We've got a combined kitchen dining space that's slightly understandard, but another living room at the front. So I would recommend that the plans are either acceptable or not as they stand, notwithstanding the request and kind offer from the applicant to make some sort of amendment. But it's unclear what that amendment exactly would be.
The plans would be better if you put the bathroom door into the lounge, frankly. I mean, but not right in the face of the person cooking.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where the change would be, and therefore, so I'm not keen on asking for something to be approved that we can't see and be sure about. The applicant has confirmed, though, that this is approved as part of the building regulations, so I wouldn't recommend that we ask for something that...
Do we have the option of deferring this until we get a proper representation of the central part of the house, possibly containing 7? Because I think this is a sham.
The phone might be near the microphone. But obviously deferral is an option.
I'm unclear. There's no clear reason for deferral. The plans are acceptable by building regulations. We're here to consider the plans that are before us.
That's right, Chairman. We've got plans that are clear and provided in front of us. These are the proposed plans. I think we should take a decision on the proposed plans.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's make some progress then. Any other questions? I mean, for me, are they acceptable or unacceptable? Unacceptable at the moment because for the reasons we've just been discussing. So that's where I'm at. Any other comments? Darren, you look like you might want to chip in.
Can I go in after all other colleagues, please?
Any other comments? So, comments, yes. Let's move on.
I propose then, therefore, we refuse the application on the grounds of the lavatory door wing right next to the cooking facilities and not good living accommodation for residents.
Thank you. Anything else? I'm also, I mean, the communal area is not up to our space standards.
The lounge.
Well, I'm uncomfortable about the situation around the lounge. So for me, that's a consideration if we're not able to add a condition. Darren.
Thank you very much, Chris. Just about the issue that you're talking about. We know that when landlords have gone to what's called first-tier tribunals, which is where they go when there's a dispute over standards, and that doors going in and out of bedrooms and other habitable rooms have featured in those tribunals. And landlords have won those tribunals. So that is more of a grey area than whether this meets our space standards or not, which seems to be a very clear thing, one way or the other. If I may, just for a couple of minutes or so, come back on Simon's very kind words about the housing service in the city. I would say this, that firstly, we have about 1,500 people on our housing waiting list, which is considerably less than most of the people. Most of them rent privately, particularly if they want a 1 or 2 bedroom flat, because most of them come to us, and I'm sure all of us councillors will have had people who are unhappy with the level of the quality of some landlords in the city, and I'm not including Carrie-Anne and Simon in this, and they want to move. We've also had people who've come to us who don't want to move into private rented accommodation, which is the first thing the team will say, because they want to house people quickly. Simon refers to the high band. I have to say there's another band called exceptional, whereby the numbers are significantly lower, and the processing is significantly faster. I would say there is an issue with the housing in the city, on which we're all agreed. It needs to be fixed. Landlords have been selling properties for years, and not just now. But as you may have noticed, there might be some anger amongst local people with regards to houses in multiple occupation, partly, and that's why all these are here. And I would suggest that trying to find a balance is a sensible way forwards.
Thank you. Well, we're fortunate to have you here today to explain those things. Okay, well, look, what else have we got? Because I think I'm going to move motion to refuse. Simon.
Could I just perhaps make a recommendation? I think the applicant nodded that although it complies with building regulations, I've just had confirmation of that, having a doorway between the WC and the kitchen dining room complies with building regulations. The applicant has said that they've received that approval, but I think the applicant, if it resolves a problem, would be happy to nevertheless alter the store in WC so that the door comes off the hallway or off the living room. So the applicant will be happy to do that and believes it's achievable. So rather than have potential refusal, could I suggest a condition that we have new plans sent to the officers that give us an amended arrangement just for that WC, so that we can make sure we can see what we get, and it removes, Councillor Smythe, the doorway from the kitchen. So that would be an extra condition to control that matter.
New condition that's in the SMAT, don't we? Which is on the page 2 of the SMAT, isn't it?
As well, yeah, still separately, yeah.
So I'm happy with that condition, because although we may have our suspicions this is going to become a 7-bedroom, this ended, and we don't, as a planning committee, like doing this, but we have to deal with what's in front of us. That is very clear, the condition on the SMAT. If you haven't seen it, page 2.
Okay.
It's such a waste of public money to do this, to come back and play games with the 7th bedroom. I'd like that on record.
Mr. Hill.
I know you don't normally let me talk afterwards, but I've just
I'm sure this is going to be.
I've just the architect. I just asked my architect to change the position of the door. So if you wait 10 minutes, I can. If you want to go on to the next application and come back to this one, I can have a plan sent over with the door having been moved.
What would you like to do? Okay. Yeah. Would that? John?
I was only going to say, if we were going to go with that route, I think putting it in the hallway would be the better option and not disturb the living room. You know, out of those two. But that's just a personal, you know, just for the residents there. I think that would be better to keep their living room as a living room. If we're going to go to those ends, I think, and the architect's going to do it, and it can be done. That's the easy. You know, I would say that would be the better option because it's in a communal. It's often a communal area.
I agree with that.
Well, there you go. There's some advice.
Anything's better than
Committee
where it
members, if that's helpful.
Not sure how that will be. Not sure how that will be viewed by members. It should the plan be coming in. I'm not sure who would print it off and circulate it. We certainly can't show it there.
Oh, am I on, Chair? I'm not comfortable with it coming in that way because I think that sets a very bad precedent about us trying to fix things on the fly. I was much happier with the condition approach that it should not be coming into the kitchen and we were delegating authority for a satisfactory resolution that met all the other standards that we have outside of that.
I'd be happy with going along with that. Just putting that in as a condition. Let's move it on. Let's be pragmatic about that. Leave the architects. We can do that without that. Then we're not, as you say. All I was saying was my comment was that I think in the communal area is better than the living room. But I think just saying it as a condition, as Simon said, as Councillor Cavendish has said, I think it's the right way. Well, I propose that. Actually, I'd propose that.
You're proposing the motion.
Propose that as a motion to get the thing moved on. Yeah.
Okay. So officer's recommendations with the conditions, and the additional conditions. Okay.
I'm seconding.
You're seconding. Okay. Right. Well, we have something on the table. Is there anything else from anyone else at this point? No? Okay. Well, if that's it, we'll proceed. Please indicate if you are happy with the motion to accept the officer's recommendations with the conditions and the additional conditions that we've been discussing. Please indicate. Okay, and against, and abstentions.
Planning permission is therefore granted.
And apologies if I mispronounced Fearon at the beginning. I should have put my glasses on for that. Okay, Fawcett Road.
Thank you, Chairman. We have an application at 198 Fawcett Road from the change of use from a small HMO, 5-person, to a large HMO, sui generis, 7-person. So just to get members in the right procedural frame of mind, these are the applications, broadly speaking, from Class C4 to large sui generis, with an increase in this instance of 2 persons, where we've had the judgments from the Planning Inspectorate across 2 years, in 21 and 22, I think, or 23, the Campbell judgments, and then the Lane judgments, establishing that each and every case, but we have had a number of judgments backed up by legal advice that such a small increase in the number of occupants does not require planning permission. Members have, on each and every merit, decided otherwise. So the report in front of you, because planning permission we believe is not required, but an application has been made, we recommend an unconditional permission, and in the normal manner we'd ask members to have a two-stage process to determine whether or not they believe planning permission is required, and then if they do believe planning permission is required, to make their own judgment on the merits of the planning application and to reach a decision on that. So this application has come to committee because of the blanket call in by Councillor Vernon Jackson for this change from C4 to sui generis. We have had 4 objections as well. It's from 5 persons to 7 persons. The certificate of lawfulness set out in the report in 2022 clarified or established in law that the property is already in use as a Class C4 HMO. We're at close to the junction of Fawcett Road and Lawrence Road. The mini roundabout's just outside the picture there. There's the Fawcett pub on the corner, just to place it for you. It's a terrace property, I believe, with rear access to the back garden. And there is a bike store that will be there. Mid-terrace with the arrow there. Small front garden there, which could accommodate some bins, as already will be the case. We've got the agent here, Mr. Hill, and I've got an update in the SMAT. But otherwise, looking at the HMO percentages and the mixed and balanced communities, as you can see, there are already a large number of HMOs within the 100-metre radius. In fact, 21 out of 59 properties. That's a percentage of 35.5%. But as the report sets out, and as you'll remember from other such examples, it is already in use as an HMO, as a Class C4. So there's no increase in HMO numbers or percentage in that area. What we're dealing with is an increase in occupancy of 2 persons proposed. So it doesn't conflict with our policy. It's a fairly typical mid-terrace house there with 2 rooms in the front main body of the house and then the rear wing, quite a long rear wing here. 3 bedrooms upstairs. The report said that, and this is going to the SMAT, I'll read it out, as a correction to the officer report at paragraph 1.6, which said there were no operational development. Actually, apologies, there would be a small single-storey extension constructed under permitted development, replacing an existing structure. It would form part of bedroom 7. So this is the small, fairly lightweight, I think, construction, as far as I can see from the aerial photograph. That would be replaced in the same footprint, which you can see there. So moving on to the increased occupancy requiring a different layout. And indeed, with apologies, there's also the roof extensions under permitted development. The property, therefore, has 2 bedrooms on the ground floor, each with an ensuite, and then the shared kitchen diner at the rear. 3 bedrooms on the first floor. Originally, there was an ensuite to each, but that was causing a difficulty in terms of space standards, and so these 2 rooms would effectively now share a common bathroom, or anyone else who may want to use it, and then upstairs the other 2 rooms have their own en-suites. All of the rooms comply with your space standards, the bedrooms in particular, as well as the communal space, and so there's no reason for us to withhold permission on the increased occupancy and the living standards. I mentioned the 4 objections, noise, parking, drainage, and so on. Some of those would be relating to it being an HMO. It is already an HMO. Otherwise, the increase in occupancy of just 2 persons, we don't believe will be so material, indeed, to require planning permission, or so material as to have a discernible effect on the locality in terms of any issues around litter and drainage, antisocial behaviour, parking, noise, and so on. So, officers recommend that planning permission is not required, but should you determine otherwise, we can go on to answer any questions and assess the merits.
Thank you, Simon. Mr. Hill.
Thank you very much for letting me speak about this application as well. So, as you've heard, this property is already an existing HMO, which was confirmed by way of a certificate of lawful development, which was granted before the current owner purchased the property. When he purchased it, it was an aesthetically fairly horrible HMO inside, one which technically was compliant with everything it needed to be, but it wasn't the most desirable HMO, although still compliant. By doing the works that we're doing to the property, we're bringing it up to a very modern standard, making it super desirable, as well as increasing the occupancy by 2 persons. The property is fully compliant with the National Planning Policy, Portsmouth Plan, PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23. It was already operating as an HMO. However, we have upgraded all of the drainage, upgraded all of the electrics, upgraded all of the waste, upgraded all of the plumbing and heating system, re-insulated every single floor, so there's insulation between the floors and between every single bedroom and between every single ensuite within the property, which we do on every single property. We have fireboarded the communal areas and we have moisture boarded every single bathroom. So we've significantly improved what was already an HMO. All of the bedrooms are greater than the minimum space standards that they need to be. One of them, for example, is 13 metre, or 2 of them are 13 metres squared. All of the bathrooms are above the minimum size that they need to be. In fact, the communal area, whilst it doesn't increase in size, we've added a roof lantern and the patio doors to bring in a significant amount more light. I'm saying all of these things because ultimately I hope it demonstrates that we're trying to improve the experience for the tenants of the property to a property that could already be occupied by HMO tenants. As Simon already said, the only ground floor addition is a side extension which has been carried out under permitted development, although ultimately it just replaces what was effectively a timber structure that was already there. The loft has already been converted under permitted development as well. Everything that I said in terms of the demand for rooms and the difficulties that are faced in the general market and private rental sector still stand. There is significant demand for these rooms. That's why we currently have a 100% occupancy rate, and I know people like Carrie Ann do as well. Thank you very much for listening to my deputation, and I look forward to answering any questions if I'm permitted to do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Members, we've been advised this doesn't require planning permission. However, what do we think? Judith?
I'd like to propose that this does require planning permission, partly because of the enormous concentration of HMOs in this area and the effect on the amenity and the character of the road. It's not a diverse place. It's very hugely overpopulated with HMOs. However, I realise that that won't weigh in looking at a planning application where there's already an HMO there. So I would like to propose that we say that planning permission is required because the change in occupation, it's 2 people, as a matter of planning judgment, fact and degree in this specific case, results in a material change of use requiring planning permission.
Thank you. Members, would anybody second that?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Sis, sorry.
Do you like the wording again?
Can you just explain the fact and degree what you're relying on?
The addition of 2 people into a smallish building, and the pressure on services locally, such as rubbish collection and density of population.
And Juliet, I would like to add also the potential impact on nitrates and also the potential impact on the amenity of neighbours. And that it should be stressed that it is in this particular case and on its own merits. It cannot be seen as a blanket approach.
I did say that in the my statement.
Absolutely. Okay. So we have to members. do we agree that this requires planning permission on the basis that we've just been heard from?
Are we voting or seconding?
Yes, we're voting. Darren seconded. Those in favour, please indicate. Okay. So we do believe this requires planning permission, and we shall now ask questions of the application. Members, any questions? Comments? No? Peter?
I think briefly we should note that this will result in an improvement in the standard of accommodation that is offered in the city. It is a densification, but the net benefit, I will be supporting the application.
So are you moving a motion?
If I'm moving a motion in support of the officer's recommendation to approve it, I'm happy to be so doing.
Thank you, Peter. And I think, Judith, you were seconding. Okay. Thank you. It's unconditional permission.
So we would add some conditions to, shall I read them out, Jim? Yep.
Conditions. The usual, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the usual conditions, but there are conditions to do with, there's not with nitrates on this, is there?
Shall I read them out now?
Yes, please.
Yes. So there would be the plan reference numbers, number 1. Number 2, the time period for implementation, 3 years. Number 3, cycle storage.
Yep.
Number 4, water efficiency connected to nitrates. And and then we would need a legal agreement, indeed, to deal with SPA mitigation.
Yes, thank you very much, Simon.
So with the 5 conditions, I think. 4 conditions plus the SPA. So members, if there is nothing else, okay, those in favour of granting planning permission with the conditions that we've just heard, please indicate.
That's unanimous. Planning permission is granted.
Thank you, everybody. Councillor Sanders, I think that concludes your contribution. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure. We move on to Pretoria Road. Okay, Councillor Candlish, if you wouldn't mind removing yourself from the room for this item. Yeah. We'll, if you're able to wait outside so we can come and get you for the last one. Okay, all right, thank you. Right. Simon, over to you for the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application at 20 Pretoria Road for the construction of a dormer to the front roof slope. The application has come to Planning Committee because the applicant, Councillor Hunt, is a member of the council. We have Councillor Hunt wishing to make a deputation, but he's not here.
No, he's not able to make a deputation, so I've told him to remove himself.
We have some SMAT information.
Yeah, we have a SMAT. I'll have to...
Quorum. Quorum. Okay.
Quite a long SMAT, members. You may or may not have had an opportunity to flick through it, but I shall take you through it to some degree. I'll show you the plans and so on first, of course, to give you an idea. So Pretoria Road is just 2 streets south of Devonshire Avenue, so between Devonshire Avenue and Albert Road, just to locate you in central Southsea. Thank you. Pretoria Road has 2 sections. The western section, you cross over Hazelmere, and then out of picture it goes on. The application property is in the middle on the southern side of the western end, Pretoria Road. You can already discern a difference in the footprint of buildings here. According to the applicant, there was bomb damage, and 3 properties, including the application site, 3 new properties within otherwise a, I think, Victorian street of about 47 properties. Here it is. You can discern the 3 different ones. So the pair of semi-detached houses with the application property, and then another post-war building next to it. The existing property is one half of a semi. The roof space is already used for accommodation, and you can see that's the rear dormer that the applicant sensibly established by way of a lawful development certificate that planning permission was not required for the rear dormer, so that has been constructed in that manner. The proposal is to have a front dormer, really a roof extension, because it's not just a dormer window, it's a large-scale front roof extension in order to provide more accommodation across the whole roof. So there it is, more or less across the width of the property, the one half of the semi. In plan form, although it looks like the existing floor plan is quite extensive, that's reduced height on the front under the roof lights. So you would get full height towards the front of the property here with the proposed extension under the flat roof. So presently there's the bedroom with an ensuite. This will provide another bedroom, ensuite, and a walk-in wardrobe there. So here are 2 views of the application property, looking west along Pretoria Road. So we have the broader terrace, and then I've forgotten the numbers now, I think that's 22, the more modern property, there it is, and then the semi. It's a bit hard to see here, but it's a pair of semis, more or less the same, originally the same design, built together, tile hanging on the front, and as time goes on there's some divergence as windows are replaced, the roof lights and porches and so on diverge, but otherwise, broadly speaking, a pair matching in broad form and appearance. Just for completion, the other side, the opposite northern side of Pretoria Road, is an uninterrupted terrace there. Most of the chimneys have been removed, and no dormer windows or forward roof extensions. Just to show the setback, approximately 4.5 metres for the property. Right. Taking you to the SMAT on the second point in the table, the neighbouring property number 18, that's the other half of the semi-detached, have written in support of the application. These neighbours note the 2 houses are set back from the road, so the proposal would hardly be noticed, and they note that the dormer has been stepped away from their half of the semi-detached pair, so they consider it would reduce any imbalance. We'll come back to the setback. The dormer, in terms of it being separated from the neighbour, has about a 10 centimetre gap shown there, so I don't agree with that point. Moving on to Appendix 2. We've now had 3 submissions from the applicants over the last week or so. The latest one yesterday evening, so not all the details are in both the SMAT and the presentation. I think everything's in the SMAT, not everything's in the presentation. So on to page 5 of the SMAT, Appendix 2. The applicant has written in support of his own application. The purpose of this application is to provide accommodation, provide a new bedroom to accommodate soon-to-arrive grandson adjacent to his parents. The applicant has noted that the 3 properties are already out of character because of the bomb damage, and so they are, plain fact, very different, which is agreed. The applicant has noted the wording in the officer reports about the setback. At para 8.4, the report says the application site is slightly set back in comparison to other properties. He's taken issue with the word slightly, fair enough. He's put an actual dimension on it, 15 feet, which is 4.57 metres. We measured 3.61 from the plans, but we're not going to quibble over about 20 centimetres. It's around about 4.5 metres setback from the street. Thank you to the applicant for that point. And then the applicant moves on to, in this first email, 3 other properties in the area with front dormers, and saying, well, if they've been allowed, then why can't mine be recommended for approval, especially with the setback of the application property. So I'll take you through those in some detail. The applicant has noted that the finishing materials will be agreed and will be to good quality and matching. From some of the applicant's photographs, which are here, he's illustrating how it is difficult to see the application site because it's in the gap set back behind the row there. Then you can start to see it. So it depends exactly. This is looking from the west, looking east. Again, it's set back. So depending, of course, where you stand in the road, that would obviously determine whether or not you can see the application property and the forward extension if approved. Clearly, the photographs we've taken here are somewhat closer and from both sides, and obviously from opposite you would see the roof extension. Otherwise, the applicant notes that the neighbours both sides are fine. We've heard from one of them positively, and he notes that the application is well designed throughout. So moving on to the submissions from the applicant. Here's the western end of Pretoria Road and the application site and the application property. And then the applicant has submitted 3 photographs of dormers nearby towards the eastern half of Pretoria Road. These photographs are also on page 7 of your SMAT, and clearly the applicant is saying, well, if these exist and have planning permission, so I think mine should, for the reasons he's given, including the setback of his property. So 113 Hazelmere Road, no planning history on that, so we don't know. Well, it was erected without planning permission. It's now lawful due to the time it's been there, which is at least since before 2009, which is the earliest Google Maps Street View we've got of it. 88 Winter Road, further afield, again, the same thing, no planning history in place, it's been there since 2009 or earlier, and same again for Hazelmere Road. We've got a lot of dormers to discuss. I don't necessarily want to get into all of them. I can comment on each and every one. But right at the outset, what I would say is we looked at the 2 nearest ones ourselves before planning, the recommendation was given. They stand or fail on their own merits, but actually that one might have been granted permission in my opinion. But really, we're going to restrict ourselves to look at Pretoria Road, the western end. That is the immediate locality. When we have refused appeals on forward roof extensions, dormers, refused applications that had an appeal, inspectors would invariably also look at the immediate locality, because once you go further afield, well, we've had a number of extensions brought to our attention, but of course also many, many hundreds of houses that don't have dormer windows, and we haven't been able to look at the histories for those roads either. For completeness, then I think a day or 2 ago we had 8 more properties shown to us. I've walked the area and looked at all of these in person as well, because depending on the angle you look at and so on, and the degree of context you can see in the photographs, this one, for example, is better, in my opinion, in context, slightly better. All of varying types, and so it's hard to draw very clear conclusions from any of them. in any event, because they're all a bit different circumstances, but they're all too far afield, in my opinion, to be able to hang anyone's hat on. Some of them don't have planning history. Some were approved, but many years ago, the planning system didn't perhaps have the same emphasis on design. We had a different local plan in place at the time. So again, I would say we can't rest on, indeed, any of them really, without wanting to go through each and every one. These are some of the same ones. I just wanted to show you that the planning department has no problems with dormers in principle. This is the Festing pub on Albert Road. Here are dormer windows built of an appropriate size, just a window, and they're all built at the same time originally. And so you get a sense of streetscape and quality and rhythm that is different to when you put one on in a street or one on a pair of semis. Here the quality is diminished somewhat by different materials over the use to the cheeks, but otherwise it's quite clear that dormers can be and are an acceptable part of the urban environment. Here's a couple of examples I just walked past of good or reasonable and bad. Just too big, just harmful. And this is a big property with a lot of architecture and bay windows, but it's still something that's landed from the sky and happened to have landed on the roof. So, and the proposal at Pretoria Road is more akin to this in terms of its width and on a different, less decorated property. Otherwise, on page 9 of the SMAT, we don't have the presentation slides here because it came in yesterday afternoon. Number 9, we've got some more photographs of, I think, 7 or 6 different properties of different ages in terms of whether or not they were consented. Some were consented in the late 80s, 2000s, all of them close to 20 or more years ago. So again, nothing there that jumps out at me as helping to support the application in question. I think I have covered everything there if you feel I've done it in enough and appropriate detail.
Thank you, Simon. Judith.
Thank you. That was very clear, and also I think a lot of those photographs of much smaller constructions than are proposed. Could you just refresh the committee's understanding of our policy on dormer windows on the front? I noticed I was in the committee when we approved we gave a certificate of the back dormer being acceptable on the same house. Do we have different rules for the front and the back, first of all? And what is our policy about it in relation to permitted development? Sometimes we look at a house in multiple occupancy that's got a new dormer, and it's said we're not allowed to look at it, it's PD, and so forth. This is the fine grain of our policy on this?
Thank you, Councillor. Rear dormer windows, if there's no Article 4 direction removing them in a conservation area, for example, that's not common either particularly. Most rear dormers, or indeed roof extensions, are permitted development. It will depend on their circumstances and the details, but mostly they're permitted development, so we can't make any judgment on their scale, appearance, design, etc., or any impacts on neighbours. Those are rear dormers. To the front, they invariably require planning permission. We don't have a specific policy on dormers, so we're dealing with our generic PCS 23 policy on general amenity and character of streets and individual buildings. So that's exactly what it discusses, is the quality and a character of a street and an individual property, and whether or not the planning authority thinks that any proposal accords and is suitable with that building and local character. So that's a matter of judgment on each and every one, and these extensions are different sizes and designs and positions and so on, but you have the office's opinion and the applicant's position on this one.
It's very clear. I think
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors?
I'll come to the question. I think permitted developments on the back of properties and how they land. I think and the window layouts and things is always a bit tricky, but I know that's yeah, it's permitted and that's fine. On the front of buildings, and it's good that we've got that clarity there. I always think that if you're going to do anything like that, and some of the pictures showed it, some didn't, that there's got to be some sort of unity in the way of the large. In this one, for instance, the windows go up, so the larger window in this instance would be to the right hand side, so it gets some sort of continuity to the look and feel of the. It sort of blends in, and you know, I saw you said about the setback. You're still going to see the building front on, and I think it's got to look aesthetically pleasing, and I'm not sure it did. So my question, coming to my question now, is did you look, or did you suggest to them, Simon, whether the larger window, so that you get some sort of uniformity to the look, did you do that? I understand it would change the inside layout of the building, but was that looked at?
Thank you, Councillor. I think you're talking about the hierarchy of windows effectively in the existing building, the bigger picture window in the, presumably the lounge, a bedroom window, and then you're asking about that. We didn't look at that, to be honest, because from our point of view, the extension is too large, and so amending the design wasn't an option for the planning officers.
Okay, thank you. Members, anything else? Comments?
Did you, I think you mentioned at some stage whether or not planning inspectors on appeal, what is the general view on that sort of thing? The big ones particularly.
Well, each and every site is different. The building, the host building, and then the, or may be different, and the proposed extension may be different as well. So it's hard to be general, but I can think of an appeal we won, I think, within the last 9 or so months, I think in the Baffins area, that part of the city, smaller than this, probably about half the width, maybe 2/3 of the width, on the properties of that sort of age around that area, a little bit younger, I think, than here. It was the only one on the street from recollection. We didn't think it was appropriate. There were others in other streets that, not surprisingly, the appellant pointed the inspector to, but that one particular one that I remember was not allowed because on this particular street and on that particular proposal, on that particular property, the inspector agreed that it wasn't appropriate. That was a different case to this one, but all I would say was that it was, from recollection, not such a wide extension as this one.
Okay. John?
Yeah, just a point, actually, or comment rather. If there is in the area the same sort of development already present, maybe at the end of the street or the road or maybe the next road, obviously residents, I'm not talking about this, just generally saying, residents are going to say, I applied, I didn't get that, and my neighbor, they got that, and you say, actually, that is the end of the road, and this is the middle of the road, or whatever. So why do we have, or is there any reason we can say, actually, that is different than yours one? Because house is house, development is development, and the same development. So why can't we have two different logics or policies in regards to the same development?
Thank you, Councillor Shah. Yeah, well, obviously a local planning authority would want to be consistent where consistency is required. So if a street has 2 or 3 forward extensions stroke dormers approved in the fairly recent past, and this is another one, we might think it's perhaps a little bit oversized, but if the other decisions were made 3, 4 years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and there are enough decisions of that way, we might not like it that much, but we would be consistent, I would say. But when, like here, there isn't another example on the street, we're able to make our own decision on that one in particular. The nearest ones that we looked at, whether or not we want to get into all the details, they didn't have any planning history. So those three, you can see, that one, and that one, they did not apply for planning permission. They did not get planning permission. So again, it's not, in terms of consistency, there is no consistency to be had here. We didn't approve those. So those are the nearest examples. I think that was the question you were raising.
Okay. Anything else?
Is the local plan going to be a bit more specific about this sort of thing than our present local plan?
I don't recall a specific Dormer mention, but the draft policy that you'll see pretty soon is pretty comprehensive. So I'll take a look and let you know, Councillor Smythe, informally.
Perhaps if you could take a look, that would be useful. I think it is an opportunity to tighten things up a bit and not to have even more inconsistency. Yep. Thank you. And to maintain the design of these streets and the integrity. Are you on to comments now? This is a difficult one, of course, because the applicant is a councillor and is rightly not in the room. But I think this is just simply too big, and I would like to uphold the officer's recommendation. It's pretty huge.
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else?
Size and scale.
Seconded by Councillor Smith. Okay. Is there anything else? Okay. So we have a motion to refuse. Those in favour, please indicate. Okay, thank you.
That was unanimous. Planning permission's refused.
Thank you. Okay, last. Oh yes, if we could retrieve Councillor Canish, Stamshaw and Tipler Leisure Centre. Councillor Dent, welcome back. Nice to see you. Okay. Stamshaw and Tipler Leisure Centre.
Thank you. This is an application at Stamshaw and Tipner Leisure Centre, formal address 69 Wilson Road, for the installation of 3 UPVC opening windows with double glazing and security screens to the east and west elevations to create ventilation to the sports hall. So we're up in Stamshaw, just east of the park, you can see there. In case members don't know the area, the motorway further to the west, Twyford Avenue to the east. So the leisure centre sits here. That's the main hall, the more community centre side of it, with I think an infants facility, children's facility is there to the rear, and a separate building adjoining, and the car park off the back. You can see a footpath on either side of the building, so that should you happen to live here and you want to get in the front door, you haven't got to walk all the way round, you can just nip down the building. So this is the main sports hall. There will be 1 window on the western elevation and 2 on the eastern elevation, and this is the objection concern with respect to the neighbour here. We didn't hear back from the neighbour to the west, but I shall show you those details. This is a view from the north looking south. So there is the sports hall, and the footpath runs down the side of it, and that is the neighbouring property. Don't worry, I have some more plans to show you. These are amended plans to clarify some of the details which were mentioned in the SMAT, because originally it was applied for casement windows, which is side opening. Actually, these are top opening, so we've just corrected that, and they were applied for as frosted. They're not. To be clear, this is a retrospective application. The development was installed in 2022, the summer of 2022. And although the application said it was frosted glazing, none was provided. The dimensions are given on the plans here. So this is the east elevation facing across to the garden of the objector. The floor level, the ground level outside of the path is lower, so you've got that 2 point. Let's get the height on it. 2.44 external distance between the window and the ground level, but internally the floor is higher, and it's 1.81, I think, meters inside, which is basically just under 6 foot, about 5'11" in old money. The wall is 2.03 high, and the alleyway 1.4, and there's a rise up on the pathway up to the level of the fire door, obviously for access reasons, and similar things on the other side. So this is the western elevation, as it says. This is the objector, the neighbour who has not objected. That's the window. I don't know if you can quite see, but there was clearly a larger window aperture there in the past, and it's the same on the other side, that was infilled, and now they're putting back a window, and that may have been some of the confusion as to whether or not planning permission was required in the first place. And sometimes people don't always realise that for a relatively small development you may or may not need planning permission. It depends on the circumstances, the fact and degree of each case. So that explains why planning permission wasn't applied for before the installation was provided. The ventilation, why is that needed now? I've played a lot of sport in the past in older buildings like this with poor insulation in the roof. Very cold in the winter, but you warm up running around. Very hot in the summer. So it's needed for ventilation across to make sure it's not overheated in the summer months. Moving on to the eastern side, which is where we have the objection from the neighbour. And you can understand why there was an objection. I'll show you the actual view from the neighbour's property. So standing in the neighbour's property, looking sideways, you may think that you would be looked over by anyone who was standing in that window. Maybe not if you sat down, but face to face, someone looking out of that window. But as I've just said, the bottom of the window is 1.81 metres, and that's, you've got another 10 or 20 centimetres to the actual pane of glass. So I'm 6 foot. You'd just be somewhere up here in terms of the bottom of the glass to see. So you'd have to stand on a chair or bench to see out, so which I just don't see happening. So I don't see any prospect. I can see why it may be perceived as a problem of privacy for the neighbour, but that's not really possible unless you're extremely tall and you happen to want to stand there and look out of the window rather than partake in the event in the hall. In terms of any possible diagonal view up into the property, if you were standing in the window and looking up diagonally, again, that's such an acute angle. If anyone really was interested in looking up there, it's surprising. And these upper windows already have the view from people coming and going along the public footpath, hence perhaps the netted curtains and so on. So although I understand why there's a perception of some privacy issues there, having visited the site and considered the merits of it, we can't see any reason, any impact on amenity in that respect. The neighbour also has a concern about noise, because I think it's not just sport. There are events in the hall of various sorts that may happen, and we've consulted regulatory services who have no objection. They do have records of complaints of loud music in 2015, 17 and 16, sorry. So 4 complaints across those 3 years or so. Nothing since, which suggests, and these windows have been in place for 1.5 years now, So I would expect there to be just the normal sound of some noise breakout through some relatively small windows, but not much noise breakout from people playing sport, some shouting, some banging and so on. But this is to be expected living next to a sports hall in the urban area. There's quite a lot of traffic noise locally as well, I would add, I noticed on site. I think that is the long and short of it for you.
Thank you. Members, Judith.
I'm afraid I still don't understand why planning permission is required. And I'd like that to be more, I just don't understand. It seems to be that a formal complaint having been made suddenly made it look like there was a planning permission required, but I just simply don't understand that. I do think there's potentially a difficulty with the neighbour relations, and would think that most of those could be sorted by good management. One can understand why the complainant feels overlooked. It wouldn't be impossible to provide a couple of panels of wood panelling to go against that wall on the other side or something. But if you could explain why we need planning permission, I'll be a lot clearer on what to think.
Thank you, Chairman. Like the dormers, each and every circumstance may be different, and there's a judgment to be made around whether or not any individual works or development requires planning permission. And you may get different answers from different planning officers or planning agents and so on. In the Act, the 1990 Act, the definition is, that the test is, does the proposal materially affect the external appearance of the building? So that will depend on the size of the window. A very small window, you'd say probably not. A very large window, you'd say. So each and every judgment. So a judgment was taken. Once the complaint came in about the installation of the windows, the applicant checked and was advised to apply for planning permission. I.e. planning permission was required, and so here's the application. But that is the test. Does it materially affect the external appearance of a building?
You're saying that even though there were larger windows originally, as shown by the infill?
Yes, but they've gone. They were bricked up, I believe.
Was any planning application applied for bricking it up?
Not to my knowledge.
Members, any other comments about the application form? Mary.
Why on earth would somebody move in next door to a community centre and not expect there to be noise sometimes of people enjoying themselves?
It's rhetorical. Okay. Well, I should move the officer's recommendation with the condition that's attached.
I mean, I'm not getting too silly, but we're allowed to say we don't think it needs planning permission, as we're accustomed to making the other decision.
I'm not sure that's something we can. Juliet? I don't think we can. I think we can. No, let's not spend any more time on that. But I don't think we can do that. I think let's.
I was going to second.
You're going to second. Okay. All right. So unless there is anything else, those in favour of moving the officer's recommendations with the condition attached. Thank you.
That's unanimous. Planning permission granted.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your contributions today. Closing the meeting at 14:35.